What is an adult problem that nobody prepared you for?
Having to figure out what I'm having for dinner for the rest of my fucking life. Also, that your car and your appliances will shit the bed the second you have any money saved. That my knees and my back are gonna hurt every time it fucking rains. The price of paper towels. Accidentally ruining your entire fucking week because you stayed up past 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Having a favorite burner on your stove that if anybody else uses, it's a fucking issue. I wouldn't call it a problem, but being excited to cancel plans. Waking up injured after doing fucking nothing. You just slept wrong. Having to recover after extensive socializing. Spending $8.99 on a head of lettuce just to have it die in the fridge. Trying to figure out if you're just depressed or dehydrated. Having your entire body crack like a fucking glow stick just because you stood up. The absolute betrayal of a hangover lasting 2 business days. Every new pain you feel in your body turns into a game of temporary or permanent.
Is anyone else getting allergies like way worse than before? Because I recently stumbled upon something very interesting. So there's a horticulturist named Thomas Ogren, and he found that many cities planted only male trees because they produce only pollen, so they're easier to maintain, versus female trees which produce fruits and seeds. Problem is, without female trees to absorb all the pollen, it just lingers in the air. He said that this practice started back from a guidance in the 1949 USDA Yearbook of Agriculture, which they recommended, quote, only male trees should be selected to avoid nuisance from the seed. Now fast forward to today, scientists are saying urban landscaping is to blame for prolonged crippling allergy seasons. Now this is not ideal for most people, but great for Big Pharma. Zyrtec, one of the most popular allergy medications, is experiencing a boom in sales. In fact, analysts are predicting that the total antihistamine market is projected to triple or almost triple in the next 10 years. And guess what Big Pharma wants to do to help cure us from our allergies? Plant more trees. Okay, a couple years ago, Zyrtec started partnering with a group called American Forests to support tree equity in 3 key cities: Phoenix, Detroit, and Washington, D.C. The result? Sky-high pollen levels in Phoenix, the Detroit metro area, and Washington, D.C. Now, are they doing this on purpose? Claiming so would be promoting a conspiracy, which, of course, we wouldn't want to do. But what I will say is that for-profit medicine will never be designed to cure illness, but rather only treat the symptoms in perpetuity.
I'm sure you've heard by now that JoJo Siwa announced on Big Brother she isn't a lesbian anymore.
Yes.
Proving what I've been saying forever, that lesbians can be flipped, contrary to what the friends of lesbians you're hitting on may tell you.
It's very vindicating. Just the other day, I received backlash for trying to flip a woman that told me she's a lesbian at my company party.
What?
Naturally, I hit her with challenge accepted, told her we have a lot in common as we're both clam hounds, and if she's had enough taco, we got sausage on the menu before pointing to my crotch. I was then written up by coworkers who insisted that's not how being a lesbian works.
Well, I bet those coworkers feel really stupid now, as should the bouncer who kicked me out of a lesbian bar for telling one of them she was too pale from the lack of vitamin D before pointing to my crotch
As one
and
does.
saying, you've tried the lock, why not try the key?
Classic line.
Well, the bouncer didn't think so, because even after I explained to her that women can't know if they like something until they tried it, I was escorted off the premises violently, completely ripping my lesbian slayer shirt with a pair of scissors crossed out.
Let me ask you a question. When she said she's a lesbian, did you ask her to prove it?
First thing I said. I also made it very clear she wouldn't have to leave her girlfriend because I'd be more than willing to take both of them at the same time.
Just checking, because that is a real win-win question. If they do prove it, nice. And if they choose not to, then you know that they're still flippable.
That said, I'll be holding my breath on the apology I should be receiving from that bouncer who insisted I should stop offering women mustache rides, even though we now know there was a very high possibility of her taking one.
Ahoy hoy, you curious news junkie, you! Welcome to the Independent Review, a weekly podcast where we bring you the latest from the world of independent journalism.
This goes out to all my Idaho friends. Gonna tell you a story not long ago. On a mountain up in Idaho. That living's free. Don't sell a sawed-off shotgun to an uncovered deputy. Don't shoot me down. Don't shoot me down. I got a wife and kid on the Ruby Ridge. Please don't shoot me down. Don't shoot me down. Don't shoot me down. I got a wife and kid on a Ruby Ridge, please don't shoot me down. They shot my good dog, they shot my boy. My only son was my pride and joy. Killed my wife, dead on the floor, holding our baby at the old screen door. Don't shoot me down, don't shoot me down. I got a wife and kid on Ruby Ridge, please don't shoot me down, don't shoot me down, don't shoot me down. I got a wife and kid on Ruby Ridge, please don't shoot me down. Yeah. We take a notion, and you wanna go high on a mountain over Idaho, that living's free. Don't sell a sawed-off shotgun to an undercover deputy. Don't shoot me down, don't shoot me down. I got a wife and kid on Ruby Ridge, please don't shoot me down, don't shoot me down, don't shoot me down. I got a wife and kid on Ruby Ridge, please don't shoot me down. Got a wife and kid on Ruby Ridge, please don't shoot me down. I got a wife and kid on Ruby Ridge, please don't shoot me down.
Welcome to the Independent Review, live on AM Wakeup on Odyssey, Rumble, Rockfin, and with the Indie News Network on Twitter. We have a great show today. So let's jump right into this first clip.
Welcome to The Last American Vagabond. Joining me today in studio is 7Cs of the Iconic Network. Thank you for joining me today, brother. It's nice to have you in live, real person discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of crazy stuff to talk about. He's been doing some amazing work around a lot of things, but the idea of the kind of total information awareness, Palantir, surveillance, medical surveillance, kind of panopticon overlap that seems to be just exploding right now. And I've got a few other things, we'll just let the conversation take us where it will. And if we get into all of it, I hope so, but we have plenty of madness out there in the world to talk about. So just out of the gate, brother, it's nice to have you in here. How are you? What's going on?
Thanks for having me, man. Absolutely an honor to be here. Been a huge fan of yours for a long time, and day's been great. I cracked some farm fresh eggs today. Got two double yolks, so that was nice.
Nice.
Yeah, nice surprise.
Only Tennessee.
Oh yeah, and just kind of doing some digging, some research, writing my first Substack article. So that's going great. And just talking with a bunch of people, trying to schedule interviews and stuff. So it's been a pretty busy day. I got a shed to build tomorrow. So
nice. So you're new to Tennessee, right?
No, I've been here about 15 years.
Oh,
or
okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, new to the area, or you're just starting a new project, or just adding to what you got?
Yeah, just building a shed in the back.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I love it. I'm just, in my mind, I mean, we're trying to do in general is kind of expand into, like I've said a long time ago, put your money where your mouth is, where it's like all the talk about different ways to be sustainable and grow. And so it's like finally our effort here to try to do something with, farming and whatever else. And, so it's just, I'm interested to see what other people are doing and expanding. And so I just think it's such an important time right now to find ways to find less dependence on the state or any kind of authority. It's every day I find more reasons to pull away in some way,
100%. I'm probably letting this out of the bag a little too early, but I'm actually working on a series that's going to go through like different tips for homesteading.
Nice.
Things to avoid, like the certain pitfalls and mistakes that people make. And
that's important.
And stuff like that.
I know a lot of people that went into that with the best of intentions, like everybody, and you just don't, like even people that want the right things for the right reasons and all have the same ideas personalities can butt heads, like I've seen some great projects just kind of fade away because of that, so those are important things to consider. It's all about people, I think, that are people that are willing. I think it all comes back to amicable disagreement. People that can be like, well, we disagree, but let's talk about it, instead of having this like reactionary kind of pushback. I think that the world trains us to be that way today. You know?
I absolutely agree. And even if I'm just doing it all to spite the government, then, that's motivation enough for me.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we should all be doing today. But yeah, it's good to have you on, man, because you've definitely been doing some good work on a lot of these, it's not just technocracy, but how it all connects with everything else and all the different people involved. It really is a just monolith of a conversation. And I'll have your links included for everybody if you want to check all this out. But I say in general, I'd like to start with this point that I even just today, I just played an interview with, for those watching, it'll probably be yesterday, the interview I had with Zoe Smith around her work coming from the kind of medical surveillance, as I don't know if you're familiar with the work, that's right, from the medical coding side of it, right? And to where she was watching this sort of like, as she called it, this SimCity view of like how all this was being used and applied and kind of just collected, and now seeing it dovetail or really turn into this immigration biometric, you know, kind of, which is the same conversation, different narrative, different justification, and talking about how it's building. And as those that have read Whitney's books and plenty of others and watched all of our work, the total information awareness direction from the government just basically became Palantir, sort of like XAI DARPA now became Twitter, you know? And so how this is all building into this massive panopticon of surveillance, you know? So before we get into anything else that jumps to my mind, like, what, you know, what's the first thing that comes to your mind in regard to not just Palantir, but that's, I think I see that being the central kind of linchpin to it, but the building of that central kind of surveillance structure and where it's going, what jumps to your mind?
Yeah. I would say that it's, you know, total control. We have, I believe the CDC director came from ARPA-H, and she's talked about using AI and basically feeding all of everyone's medical records directly into that and seeing how we can create new vaccines. And it feels like COVID all over again, but now everything is just okay. And there's little resistance because for some reason, everything that Trump is doing, he's Teflon Don, you know, and
and some people, it definitely seems that way, at least as it's being presented to us. I tend to think that more people than we realize are speaking up about it, but how do we know? You know, you just can't see it. Yeah, it's infuriating to see how it continues down this same path for the different reason. And, you know, I just, you know, so where do you think that the objective is in this in regard to the surveillance aspect, the kind of, like you're saying, the kind of consolidation of all of this information? Like, what do you, just your opinion, where do you think their end game is in this? What are they trying to accomplish?
I think that ultimately they're trying to transform the human genome so that when they start adding like technological implants and stuff, like we've known there's a history of vaccines being like immunosuppressants and basically trains the body to stop developing its own antibodies and things like that. And I think that, you know, the chips in the microchips in the head and the, you know, the W-band, the Internet of Bodies, it's very real, very documented stuff is coming up. And I think they're getting our body ready for those things.
Real interesting. Yeah. So just right to the, you know, so the technocratic, or rather more so the transhumanist direction, right? So it's weird how these things are seen as different topics are really just like one's further than the other, but they seem to be sort of coming to a head at the same time. You know, it's like the technological advancement is now able to achieve all of this at the same moment. So, you know, in regard to the surveillance, and again, I was just actually talking about this in yesterday's show or day before yesterday for the day we're recording this, the great Palantir reset. It's wild to me how this is exactly what was being rolled out under Biden and long before that. And everybody seemed resistant to it. Right. Literally everybody was like, absolutely not. Even plenty of people on the left were uncomfortable and speaking out about it. And so now it's just so alarming. And maybe we can get to this end of the show in general, the whole like weird dynamic of the two-party illusion, that suddenly people are not just not pushing back, not just even being quiet, but like cheering on what they 30 seconds ago were saying was the end of civilization. And, you know, so how do you read that? I mean, how do you make sense of that?
I mean, it seems like it's all just a product of the division, like the division that they sow between us on a small scale, the large scale narratives and everything like that, especially with the two-party illusion, that as long as they're doing something to hurt the other side, even if it's against their own best interests, they're all for it. And it's like people lack the foresight to see how maybe it's not changing something right now, but 5 years from now, the world's going to be totally I mean, when the internet happened, you know, DARPA's ARPANET launched, and now we live in a completely different world than we did 30 years ago.
Yeah, and it's a fair point, because and that point, I don't think we even could fathom what would become of the internet. Like, we would barely understand what today is back then. Same point. And I say this about the genetic, you know, biometrics and all the different things they're collecting on us that we don't even really grasp. Even what we understand, like digital twins and all the things we know about, I still argue we don't even barely understand what that will mean in a real sense 20 years from now. Right. You know, like the idea that they just own all the biometric data about you. Do they, you know, it could get into all sorts of hypothetical, you know, what that means is terrifying to me when we see, at least right now, what they're doing in regard to, you know, recreating you on a digital sense and what that really means, like kind of, as well as the idea that we see these biometric access points to all of our personal data. Does that mean they could just use, I mean, logically, yes, they could just use your biometrics to enter. You know, it's a very terrifying kind of thing. And now bringing this into the overlap of the deportation dynamic and what we're seeing in the world today, where we're seeing the surveillance on a large scale being now rationalized under immigration. And so I'm sure you saw this as well in 404 Media, where it's saying Palantir's plan to help ICE deport people. So now we're seeing this kind of dovetail with the idea of getting rid of people from the country. But, you know, do you think that's really the objective here in regard to immigration? And how do you see that playing into it all?
I do think that they will end up utilizing the deportation. Trump's even said that, you know, the homegrowns are next on the list. But I could see it very well being a sort of doorway for him to deport dissenters. And, you know, he's setting precedents now with all this MS-13 rhetoric. And I think eventually it's just going to expand to anybody that doesn't agree with the administration. You have people like Steve Bannon, which I'd kind of take with a grain of salt because it's Steve Bannon, but he's talking about Trump, you know, running for a third term.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Trump mentioned that we're not going to have to vote anymore. There's not going to be any more elections. And I think ultimately we're going to end up moving to where the government is largely run by AI, which is what Doge is doing. And it's just going to be this like cold calculating robot that has no morals, and there's no possibility of like a whistleblower or potential leaks of things. And
yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I was just grabbing something that I recently talked about in that regard to the impending future of AI government, you know, and what that really means. And that's not really that that's happening right now. GSA, the bot they already used, you know, artificial intelligence for efficiency. These are real things they're talking about. So yeah, that definitely is a logical step. And what they're telling you is coming, you know? And so the interesting point you made there with like Steve Bannon, before I go in more into that direction, this is a kind of an interesting side note. You know, the narrative they're throwing out there. Do you think that is a genuine thing, or do you think that is about trying to get people to like jump at shadows and ignore the technocratic rollout, like things like the third term? You know, like for example, we've seen like the floated idea of like taking Greenland, or these ideas that were, at first people were like, that is he just like trolling everybody? You know, that sounds insane, right? Like threatening military force for the Panama Canal. Like, these are wild ideas that then clearly became real, like, or always were. I don't know. And his own audience were like, you're just being trolled, like you're falling for it, you know? And then 30 seconds after, it was like, now it's a not good idea and you shouldn't have pushed back on it. You know, so the same kind of idea with that is the third term, for example, taking that one head on. They're just so it's clear for everybody out there, there's no legal rationale for that, whether consecutive or not. It is very clear. I think it's the 22nd Amendment. It says very clearly that that's not either way allowed. And so him floating that, and then Trump going, like kind of the way he does, kind of middle of the road, and then Bannon going, no, he's going to in that last interview. So do you think that's, what do you think the likelihood is of that? Do you think it's a ploy?
I think it's kind of likely. I wouldn't take it off of the table. I obviously subscribe to a little bit more of the esoteric stuff as well. And, you know, when it comes to like the Kabbalist belief system, they have to get manufactured consent or some sort of consent. And I think every time they put something out there like that, that's like jokingly, and people don't resist it, people don't get upset about it, and they just let it happen, that to them is manufacturing that consent. And at the end of the day, it absolves him of accountability, because he's like, well, if you didn't want me to run for a third term, why didn't you guys stop me?
And you know, that's such a problem right now. That's that whole like Andreessen or Anderson. I always called him at first, but Andreessen, I guess how you say it, Mark Andreessen and Alex Karp, and you know, all of them are basically throwing this idea out of like the oligarchy saving you from the oligarchy. You know, like this Machiavellian idea. Like Trump even said that Napoleon quote, like you know, ends justify the means. However, you actually wrote that out. So they're all really pushing that idea that we just need to give up that control to them, because that's how it's always worked, or rather just let them do what they need to do to get it done. You know, and the third term, at the point that I was making about that, is that they are like, even deportations, kind of just saying like, or even the mandate point, like, well, you voted me in for this point, so how dare you say I can't do it, even though it's illegal? You know, it's manufacturing. Like, I see the destruction of this country's foundational ideals. It's insane to me. And the very people that are arguing that that is the most important thing in the world are the ones that seem to be now okay with it. You know, I get the sense that is like the rest of it, like putting a toe in the water. Like, we're kind of joking, but if they're not pushing back, so maybe we should actually do it. Like, that seems like how a lot of this goes. But yeah, it would be wild to see that. And I think if they did that, it feels like that would be in the designed, like, drive us to civil war kind of an idea. I mean, so let's just say from that extension of that point, if that happened, and it was obviously like the same thing we're seeing right now, where it is illegal, like there's no way around it, it's unconstitutional. And for those that may not know, what you should by now, if it's unconstitutional, you can't pass a law to change that. That's not how the Constitution works. You know, if it's repugnant to the Constitution, it's null and void. Mayberry versus Madison, 1803, I believe. But so that what do you think would be the end game there? What would be the accomplishment? Like, I think that's, you know, would that be to take power? Would that be for, I mean, what are your thoughts on why they would do that? With seeing how completely undermining it is of this country.
So I'm going to go very harebrained, maybe tinfoil hat a little bit.
Go for it.
So I think that they are slowly going to push the World War III narrative. And I think that if we do end up having he's going to use that as grounds to secure another term, like when we had FDR
emergency
in World War II.
Right.
And if that does end up causing like civil unrest or some sort of civil war, that's the perfect excuse to enact martial law and bring out the robots. And
or whatever else to justify to control. Exactly. You know, and that's not even, what's funny is that's not even harebrained. That's like a basic government plot that we've seen 1,000 times over in the world. You know, it's crazy because people don't want to acknowledge that their chosen ideologue would do that. You know, like people that supported Biden would argue he was the one trying to save you from Trump and vice versa. It's always how it goes. It's insane. I was just reading something from Larkin Rose about that. And really this applies to everything, but it's about the deportations where it was something like, I guess the gist of it, try to remember the exact wording, was just that every time it goes the same way, where we come to a point to where there are principles. They all at least believe in some way they have them, or they feign to have them. And then they rationalize it like now by going, but X, Y, and Z, you know, but there's so many cases we can't do it all in time. It doesn't matter the narrative, right? They're just giving you something to allow you to rationalize what you otherwise wouldn't allow, which is the undermining of your principles and values. And then both sides point at each other. It never seems to stop, you know?
Hegelian idealism.
And
I actually see like a lot of parallels with the French Revolution to now. You have Alex Karp, who wrote the Technological Republic, that I've been meaning to read, so I can kind of get some insight into. I think he's crazy, just personally.
I like a sociopath in my mind, at least.
And you know, the Trump quoting Napoleon thing. You have the, you know, where they manufactured the Sabbateans, basically came in, made the king make all these terrible decisions, and then they use that as the excuse to overthrow him. I think Biden was kind of that French king, and now we have a revolution. And there was even you remember the storming of Bastille, the fortress. We had the Capitol, you know, and it just seems like there's so many parallels. And I remember a couple months ago actually saying, like, I feel like we're going through the French Revolution again. And then 2 days later, Trump quoted Napoleon.
It's so interesting.
And I was like,
you know, you wonder, is that because they sense that in the conversation, or are they the ones seeding that in the conversation? I think it's both half the time. You know, you don't know. But I do think it's important to think about that the government, especially this administration, uses what they see, you know, what they see kind of bubbling up in the conversation, and then they jump on it, and then they use that as like the fulfillment of that prophecy. Like, oh, he did do it. We predicted it. And he's just reading what they said, you know.
Now, let's take a look at this report from Dave DeCamp of Anti-War News.
Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. This is Anti-War News for Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. All right, the first story at the top of antiwar.com today: Israeli government okays plan for the full occupation of Gaza. So the Israeli government has approved plans to expand the genocidal war on Gaza that Israeli officials say will lead to the full Israeli military occupation of the Palestinian territory. The plan involves capturing more territory in Gaza, expanding the so-called buffer zone, where the IDF has demolished virtually every structure, and forcibly displacing Palestinian civilians to move all of them into one small area of southern Gaza. So Axios later reported that the Israeli plan would involve flattening every single building in Gaza, completely destroying the place. I mean, even more so than it's been destroyed. And it would also involve, again, forcing the entire civilian population into a single area and pressuring them to leave as part of an ethnic cleansing plan. Though it is unclear what countries they would go to, what countries would take them in. But this is what Israel is planning to do in this next stage. An Israeli official told Haaretz that the plan is different from previous Israeli military operations because it will lead to the occupation of territory and a sustained Israeli presence in Gaza. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich said that Israel is finally going to occupy the Gaza Strip and that it is no longer afraid of the word occupation. So this is the plan that Smotrich, one of the most, extreme members of the Israeli government, has been pushing for all along. I think this has been the goal all along. I think that's been pretty clear from the beginning that if Israel had its way, ethnic cleansing is the goal. And there was a Israeli intelligence ministry document that was leaked way back in October 2023 that said the best case scenario would be to push every single Palestinian in Gaza into Egypt, completely cleanse the place. And that's October 2023 that the Israeli intelligence ministry said that. So Smotrich said that once the new offensive starts, nothing will stop Israel's plans to conquer Gaza, not even Hamas releasing all the Israeli hostages. He said, quote, "There will be no retreat from the territories we have conquered, not even in exchange for hostages. Once we occupy and stay, we can talk about sovereignty. But I did not demand that this be included among the goals of the war. First, we will defeat Hamas and prevent it from existing," end quote. So he says, once we occupy all the territory, then we'll talk about annexing it, basically, making it official, bringing it under full Israeli control. So both Smotrich and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have said explicitly that freeing the hostages is not their priority and that the ultimate goal is ethnic cleansing, which of course they frame as voluntary migration, as if there's anything going to be voluntary about this. Forcing people to leave under the threat of death or making the place completely uninhabitable. There's nothing voluntary about that, of course. I don't even need to say that. So a group representing the family members of Israeli captives held in Gaza slammed the new plan for Gaza. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum said the plan should be named the Smotrich-Netanyahu plan to give up on the hostages. So an Israeli official said that Israel would allow a window to reach a hostage deal with Hamas during President Trump's visit to the region, which will begin on May 13th, before launching the offensive. But, as things stand, a deal does not seem likely at all, since we've had Hamas repeatedly offer to release all the hostages in exchange for a permanent ceasefire. And Israel has rejected that. They've completely rejected the idea of any kind of permanent truce. Everything they're offering is temporary. And, because Hamas knows that, Netanyahu's making very clear, he said again explicitly that his goal, long-term goal, is occupation and ethnic cleansing. So Hamas isn't going to agree to a temporary deal to give up what little leverage it has. That's just the reality, however you feel about that. And the chances of a deal here just seem completely slim. The Axios report said that President Trump is not pushing for a ceasefire deal and has effectively given Prime Minister Netanyahu a green light to do as he sees fit. So that's based on Israeli sources who said Netanyahu can just do whatever he wants. Trump's not going to push for a ceasefire. And I think it's pretty clear that Trump's not pushing for a ceasefire based on what we're seeing happen today. So, and then this next one here, it's just the pictures and everything that's happening in Gaza, just an absolute nightmare that's being 100% supported, funded by the U.S. So Israeli strikes, this is the next story, Israeli strikes kill 51 in Gaza as another baby starves to death. So Israeli attacks on Gaza killed at least 51 Palestinians since dawn on Monday, medical sources told Al Jazeera, as another baby starved to death in the Strip due to the U.S.-backed Israeli blockade. According to the Palestinian news agency Wafa, Yusuf al-Najjar, a 4-month-old baby, died of malnutrition. Yusuf weighed only 3.3 pounds when he died, less than 1/4 of the average weight for his age. 3.3 pounds, a 4-month-old baby. Mothers suffering from malnutrition cannot produce breast milk for their babies, and they have a lack of protein in their diet, and that's what they need to produce it. And the Israeli blockade is blocking the delivery of baby formula. So we're seeing babies starve to death. We're seeing picture every day, see different babies, very young children looking completely emaciated, like this picture here of this baby in Gaza. And this is, again, this is being funded by our tax dollars. The starvation of Gaza is being funded by our government by providing Israel with all this military aid that it does. So UN agencies and other aid groups have said they have trucks ready to go, ready to enter Gaza, but Israel continues to block everything. And the Trump administration is backing this collective punishment of the civilian population, this starvation of Gaza. You have Randy Fine, the new congressman from Florida. He said something on Twitter about this. He said, starve them away. It's just absolutely barbaric what's happening here. So again, I mean, I really need to start putting more focus on the humanitarian situation in Gaza, because it looks like, we're already seeing babies die of malnutrition. I think if things don't change, we're going to see like mass starvation. All right, so the next one here, details on Israeli strike that launched a boy on roof in Gaza. So there was a video that came out last week or maybe 2 weeks ago toward the end of April. One of the most horrific videos I've seen come out of Gaza in the past year and a half, and that's saying a lot. I'm sure a lot of you saw this. This is kind of the censored version of the video from Middle East Eye that we have here. And it's a young boy on a roof in Gaza right after an airstrike. And he's yelling for help. And I mean, it's covered in soot, covered in blood. And behind him is a corpse, is a dead person who turned out to be his father. And then the camera pans and you basically see what are pieces of a little girl, which was one of his sisters. Again, just one of the most brutal and graphic videos I've seen come out of Gaza. So we got some details on this strike. So the Israeli airstrike that launched a 7-year-old boy onto the roof of a neighboring building in Gaza and killed 15 members of his family, including his 5 sisters, targeted a Gaza finance ministry official who was released in a prisoner swap just 2 months earlier. A video recorded by Palestinian journalists showed the boy, whose name is Ali Hrvoje, moments after he was blown onto the roof crying for help. Nearby was his dead father and the pieces of one of his sisters. The footage spread widely on social media, and Ali recounted his experience to journalists. He said, quote, "I was sitting with my father, my sisters were playing. Suddenly, our house was bombed," end quote. The Israeli military has refused to comment on the slaughter, but Palestinian sources told Haaretz that Hrvoje's father, Hrvoje, was likely the target. He was an employee for Gaza's finance ministry, so that means he wasn't a military official or anything. And he was detained by Israeli forces shortly after the IDF launched its initial ground invasion in Gaza. So he was arrested by the IDF, and he was released in February as part of the hostage deal. So just only to be killed along with the majority of his family.
Next, we have this clip from the Free Thought Project podcast with guest James Corbett of the Corbett Report.
What I wanted to ask you is, like, why do you think that the establishment gatekeepers are letting this mask slip now? Like, what's their angle here?
There are a number of possibilities, one of which is that if people go and listen to the recent Tucker Carlson conversation with former Congressman Curt Weldon, which is definitely part of this change in the 9/11 zeitgeist, they will see subtle hints of what might be part of a larger limited hangout propaganda operation that's designed to use 9/11 quote-unquote truth in order to foster yet more wars in the Middle East. Because as Weldon just kind of inserts in there, bin Laden was actually hanging out in Tehran for a few years when he was on the run. And apparently the Iranians were sheltering him, right? And that was just kind of thrown in on a sideways way that they didn't go into in much detail. But you can imagine where that kind of narrative would go. Yeah, it's the Shia Iranians who are protecting this Wahhabi Sunniist radical terror. Yeah, that makes absolutely no sense, but it certainly makes sense from a geopolitical point of view if you wanted, for example, to have a get into Iran free card. So there are potential ways that limited hangouts of 9/11 truth could be used for geopolitical purposes. But even beyond that, I think there is a point in the story in which, it doesn't even matter to a certain extent if certain pieces of that puzzle come out and certain things get revealed, because we are now at enough of a political remove that it is not the central core beating political issue that it would have been if any of these things had even been mentioned during the Bush administration. Well, now we're 20 years on. We're in a totally different place. There's an entire group of people who are now of a voting age who weren't even alive at the time of 9/11. That's crazy to think about, but here we are. So I think, like JFK, I mean, they can open the kimono and reveal a few facts about JFK that we didn't know for 5-6 decades, because it doesn't particularly matter. No one's going to jail over it at this point. So that might be part of it as well. Having said that, I don't want to disparage people for coming out and talking about, at least at the very least, I will give, for example, Tucker Carlson, I will give him credit for coming out and flat out saying, I was a child and an idiot. And I was totally wrong about that. So he at least will admit that. And I think he's right. He was a child and an idiot the way that he acted towards 9/11 truthers back in the day. But unfortunately, some people have misinterpreted my article as if it's some sort of egotistical thing on my part. Well, I was here talking about it, so, poo-poo to you. It's not intended in that manner. It is intended for people to at least have the chance to reflect on, okay, here is a man who admits he was a child and an idiot and got it wrong for decades. And yes, he is now admitting that he got it wrong. Okay, that's good. That's a good step. But doesn't that say something about, at the very least, this person's judgment? If not, well, why? Why were they so vehemently opposed to this truth 20 years ago? And why did they not even countenance the thought of questioning the 9/11 story? Doesn't that say something about, at the very least, this person's ability to tell you what's going on in the world today in an unbiased manner? Shouldn't we look at people, and I'm not saying myself, I'm saying all of the people who did get it right for those couple of decades, shouldn't we be paying more attention to those people than to the people who are now admitting they were stupid, childish idiots for not looking at that truth? That seems to me to be the core of this issue, because the question is, okay, well then what do you do now? Who do you listen to now? What are you going to do with your time and energy and attention? Are you going to direct it to, oh wow, he was on MSNBC/CNN/Fox News, therefore he's a big deal and an important guy, even though he admits he was a stupid, childish idiot?
Right. And I think it really points towards what many of us, myself, Derek Bros, David Icke, I think Icke probably was the one that coined the term, this rise of this mainstream alternative media, which are essentially a couple of like former news personalities like Tucker Carlson, who, obviously we know, mainstream corporate mouthpiece for his entire career, intern for the CIA, deliberately propped up on Fox News to be like the young hip guy that the kids should listen to type stuff. And then, of course, we have these other sort of compromised, indie media guys that used to have some integrity. Of course, at the tip of that spear, using his own terminology, would be guys like Alex Jones or Luke Rudkowski, Tim Pool, these guys that are really being propped up in a way to push to push an official, quote unquote, alternative narrative that just ever so conveniently keeps people stuck inside of the fake left-right two-party sort of paradigm, creating this dichotomy outside of a dichotomy to sort of keep people in this like psychological panopticon in a way. And it's really creating an interesting, in a way, sort of battleground within this existing information war that we've all been caught up in so long. And I actually did want to get your thoughts on that sort of mainstream alternative media phenomenon that we're seeing sort of encroach upon, an actual truth movement that strives for truth and accountability and actual solutions outside of statism.
Well, you raise a number of important points there, one of which is, yes, the sort of release valve that clearly exists as part of the quote-unquote alternative independent media. And I think I would liken it to, let's use the Hollywood analogy here, in The Matrix. Perhaps obviously that was predictive programming in a number of ways. And I'll just throw on the table, of course. Did anyone notice Neo's passport expiry date in the Matrix? It
Yes.
was 9/11/2001.
So
Just
weird.
a coincidence. Anyway, but that was predictive programming in a number of ways. But perhaps the most interesting part of that predictive programming was that ultimately what that series taught people was, well, okay, there is the real world that you can wake up into, and you'll be fighting with the people in Zion, and you'll kill the machines and win the day. But what if that whole narrative, the whole Zion, humans resisting the machines thing, what if that narrative was part of another Matrix program? What if it was still in the simulation? And that's, I think, the sort of idea that we could turn to when we look at the mainstream alternative media, or whatever you want to call it. Yes, don't worry, guys. These guys are independent now. So now you can trust them. And the people who actually have been independent and been doing this and been censored and everything else, been knocked off of platforms, etc., for decades, whatever, who cares about them? These are big mainstream stars that are now independent, quote unquote. There's a number of factors behind that, one of which is just the fact that is just a fact that the comet struck on the mainstream media around the turn of the 21st century, and they are only now starting to notice this. So there are a number of news anchors and reporters and what have you who are suddenly realizing, this bread and butter paycheck that I was getting from my soft, cushy media company job is maybe not going to be the stable income I need for the rest of my life. I better get on Substack or whatever, wherever people can make money these days. So we are seeing some element of that. But yes, it would be naive not to think that there has been some concerted attempt to control the quote unquote independent media narrative by inserting agents into that narrative. And one example, something that we can put our finger on, is the writings of Cass Sunstein, who was the Harvard lawyer who went on, Harvard professor, who went on to become Obama's quote unquote information czar, which I had to look up. Apparently it is the White House Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. I've only ever heard it called the information czar, which is that weird Soviet era rhetoric that they've slapped onto the US system. But anyway, he became Obama's info czar. And what was he writing about when he was at Harvard? Oh, right. He was writing about how the internet, one of the big problems of the internet is that it has uncorked the bottle, so to speak. And now you have all these people who can talk directly to each other, and we don't have the gatekeepers like we used to. And of course, this is a problem because of misinformation, of course, or whatever they were calling it back in the early 2000s. And so one of his suggestions, infamously, was, well, we might need to send people in sort of undercover. I don't think he cited this directly, but like FBI, for example, back in the COINTELPRO days, they would insert people, agents into groups in order to report on those groups and disrupt those groups. And, for example, start calling everybody in the group, that guy's an agent, that guy's an agent. And of course, the person who's doing that is actually the agent. So Sunstein was suggesting something like this to cognitively infiltrate online discussions so that you can disrupt the narrative of these conspiracy theorists who are threatening democracy, blah, blah, blah. Well, anyway, that's an example of exactly how this can be implemented. And I think we would be naive to think that it hasn't been implemented to some extent. Having said that, there is another side of almost like a trap that has been sprung by people like Sunstein, in that simply implanting the idea, okay, maybe we should have some agents go undercover and infiltrate these groups and start spreading, government friendly information. Just implanting that idea then makes everybody start looking around and start going, oh, that guy's an agent, that guy's an agent. It implants the idea, oh, everyone's a cognitive infiltrator, and it gives everyone an easy out. If that person doesn't agree with me, then they're a cognitive infiltrator. And that becomes part of another divide and rule tactic. So in addition to the sort of waking up to reality, which is actually just another level of the Matrix, you also have this inserted narrative that it basically enacts the divide and conquer strategy within the independent media space. So what is the solution? What is the answer to this conundrum? The problem is nobody's going to like the answer, but it is the answer. And the answer is that we have to take cognitive sovereignty back into our own hands, declare our own sovereignty. We are free individuals who are capable of looking at information for ourselves and coming to our own conclusions. And then that's what we have to do. And that means you're going to have to listen to people that you agree with and people you disagree with and people all over the place and try to triangulate the best information you can. And that's a lot of work, which is precisely why no one wants to hear it. Everyone wants to hear, listen to these guys. They know everything. They know the truth. Just listen to them and you'll be fine. But that is exactly the wrong way to go. If we are putting our faith in people and individuals and following people, then we have lost it. But if we are looking at information and what we can prove, then we are on the right track.
Yeah, it's like most people want, and I've said this for a while, they want simple answers for profoundly complex problems. And that's simply not the way that the world works. I mean, I've always said for a while now, if people want to understand something, they have to put in the time and the effort to actually learn things. And sadly, a lot of our society now has been just sort of like mentally castrated in a way with like this short form content and just dumbing down the attention span of give it to me simple, when life itself, the very nature of life is a very beautifully complex thing, but it's something that you have to delve into so much. And I talk about this a lot, especially when I'm talking about like the philosophy of religion and history, because I love studying theology and ancient history and things of that nature. And I was actually just having a conversation about this the other day where I was saying, if somebody actually wants to understand something, they have to put aside their dogmas and their preconceived notions. And no matter what you think of something, there is no such thing as too much education. Even if you're like, oh, I believe in this thing, so I can't even contemplate the possibility of that thing potentially being true, still go and learn about that thing. Because even if you are correct and your belief is the right one, it still empowers you mentally to have more information about a thing. There's no such thing as too much education. And, sadly, that is just not in the forefront of a lot of people's mindsets nowadays.
Mentally castrated ourselves with short form content. I really like that, Donna. I think that really hits the nail on the head because, from what I see on Twitter, a lot of times it isn't the kind of the more long form posts that really get the engagement, right? It's the sound bites, it's the hot takes. And to James's point, I mean, that COINTEL Pro label that gets thrown around way too much. And it does a disservice. Absolutely. And in fact, there's too many people who get some type of clout or street cred ability for, accusing everybody of being the COINTEL Pro agent that's infiltrating the group or, the space or whatever. So it's interesting to watch that. I'm not going to lie. This definitely has become much more difficult work over the years as time has gone on. And there's just not a lot of money in the middle, right? I mean, for people like ourselves who are philosophically consistent, who are principled, it has been, as you were saying earlier, James, it's never really been easy because we are the people asking the counterintuitive questions, making the counterintuitive points that doesn't always align with what's popular at the moment, and add on top of the fact checkers and the algorithms that are against us and our already kind of fractured and splintered movement. It's really, difficult to get any type of engagement and steady progress moving forward on social media these days, let alone actually being funded to do it. And, speaking about all this too, we could definitely go down that rabbit hole, but there are things that are happening right now that I wanted to get your take on because obviously this whole free speech thing on campuses has become like a big focal point for the First Amendment. And I think, most of us probably remember back in 2021 when Trump was banned from social media for essentially saying these mean words, right? And ironically, it's happening again, but now the roles are reversed where Trump is, illegally deporting these students who criticize Israel, which is absolutely insane. And even more insane, these limited government conservatives who used to champion the First Amendment and the Constitution, who are also painting themselves as victims of censorship during the Biden years, are the people that are, the biggest cheerleaders cheering it on. I was going to get your take about like Trump's recent war on the college campuses and dismantling free speech, to protect Israel from these mean words. Like, do you think this is going to have bigger implications cracking down on independent journalism for this quote anti-Semitism speech moving forward? Is this something that you're kind of worried about as far as across the board with free speech?
Well, that is obviously the intended effect of this, even just announcing it, let alone actually following through on it. Once again, I would say that the ire should really be directed at those people who will go along with this. It's, again, I expect this from people at the top of this corrupt pathological system, but it's the people who support it tacitly or full-throatedly who need to really understand that they can never, ever talk about censorship or free speech issues ever again, because they are hypocrites if they will go along with, oh, but it's okay. It's okay in this case. I mean, that person's saying the bad thing about that I disagree with. So, okay, the censorship is okay. No, and it goes back to a point that Matt was making earlier about the people who are supporting the police state are the same people who were obviously not supporting it during the Corona time, but they cannot, I guess it's the lack of political imagination or the lack of historical thinking, or I don't know what it is that makes people not be able to understand that somehow at some point these principles that I am supporting or advocating for will be used against me by my worst political enemy, because that is the way the system has been structured. Any power that you gladly bestow on your political savior is the exact power that your political enemy will use against you 4 years from now, 8 years from now, whenever it happens. And oh my God, the pendulum swings again. How could it possibly be that they have all these powers to censor people? It's unbelievable. I never would have thought this would have occurred. And again, I think that the real point of this is that it is always about the people, and the general public opinion is what really drives this system. If it were not the case that what we thought and what we advocated for and what we believed matter, they would not spend so much time and effort and energy propagandizing the public. The fact that they do shows that it really does matter what the public are thinking. So yes, absolutely, the crackdown on free speech that is already taking place and is really being exacerbated right now is, as I say, to be expected from the would-be controllers and social engineers. But it is the people who are supporting that who need to understand that they are now excluding themselves from this conversation going forward, and they will not be taken seriously.
Now we have this clip from Johnny Vedmore and his interview with Rachel Wilson.
Hello and welcome to the Newspace podcast with me, your host, Johnny Vedmore, and I'm here with Rachel Wilson today. Now, we've spoken on a couple of occasions before on TNT, and I've had the most. I'm like a kid in it. I was saying just before I press record there I'm like a kid in a candy shop. This is just subject matter that I am so into. And I didn't expect to be interested in feminism. I suppose I understand that there's a whole cultural trend at the moment, like almost a destruction of what it means to be feminism, maybe even a deconstruction. And I don't understand it fully, but I kind of understand why it's happening and some of the reasons why it's happening. And that has brought a lot of us into, debating about the LGBTQ plus whatever community. But this is really like, I think we got a hyper focus on who got us to these places, their motivation, how the ideology of now is being created. And that's what I really like to do. And just before, about 6 months before I first spoke to you, I had kind of become embroiled in a case, probably 6 months to a year, where I was investigating Gloria Steinem, and she was a great part of that case. And then I realized what feminism was, and why it stunk so much if you see the roots of it. So please, Rachel, can you tell the people at home who you are, what you consider yourself as doing, and what your area of focus is?
Sure. Well, I'm Rachel Wilson. I am just a normal lady from the rural Midwest. I have 5 children. I homeschool them. And it's a kind of a convoluted story of how I got into being, I guess now I'm considered one of the kind of primary source researchers on feminism and the historicity of it. And it really came about kind of from my own life of being like a gifted student going through school, being expected to go to college and have some kind of really important career, doing something important for the world. This was like the expectation for me growing up. And by the time I got done with K through 12 school in the United States, I realized that school was not for smart people, that school did not teach you a whole lot, despite, you know, the vast amount of time you spend there. And that it was much more about sitting in a chair and warming a seat so that the federal government can count your head and then disperse funds than it was about learning, thinking, teaching yourself how to learn, or anything like that. So by the time I got done with high school and was expected to go to college, I couldn't really bear the idea of like university. After all that, I was kind of like, ugh. Didn't see the point in it, and everyone around me thought I was insane. My parents thought I was crazy. My teachers thought I was crazy. And I kind of made a bargain and said, I'll just take a year or two off. I'll just join the workforce and see if I still want to go to college in a year or two. And they all kind of begrudgingly said, well, I guess we can't make you. And what I discovered was I didn't think I wanted to go to school. Not only that, but I had my first baby when I was 20, which I thought was a fantastic thing. I thought, this is great. I'm having a baby. It's what I'm supposed to do. I want to be a mom. I loved being a mom right away. And everyone expected me to go straight back to work and drop the baby off in daycare. And I remember just being heartbroken about that. Like, I dreaded every minute of it, and I didn't get much time with my baby before I was supposed to drop her off at a daycare all day. And I thought, why am I going to work 40 hours a week? You know, I'll see her for a few minutes in the morning and maybe a couple hours at night. And the rest of my existence is dedicated to working so that I can pay half of what I make so that some other lady can do what I want to do, which is raise my child. And when I would voice these things to the people around me, I was treated like I was crazy, like I was the weird one. Like, even the Christian conservative women around me were like, this is how we do it now, Rachel. You don't want to go back to the evil days of oppression.
It's one or the other, Rachel. Rachel, if you don't hand over your baby, we're going to have to whip you. You understand that, don't you?
Yeah. You don't want to be a slave to some man. Don't you want to go work for a corporation? Doesn't that sound great? It just, none of it really made sense to me. And even at that age, I started thinking, how did this become the system? How did this become the standard? Because I'm very close with my grandmother, who's still alive. She's going to be 99 in April.
Ooh! Oh, good on her.
She mostly raised me because I had a very Marxist feminist mother who did believe in that whole oppression narrative and pushed it really hard. And so she would drop me off at grandma's all the time so she could go off doing whatever it was that she was doing. And so I spent a lot of time with someone who was born in, and my other grandma as well, I spent a lot of time with. She was born in 1918. My grandma, who's still here, was born in 1926. So growing up with them, I had a very different worldview that I absorbed from spending a lot of time with them. And I thought, my grandmothers did not do things this way. They didn't, you know, believe that their husbands were slave drivers and that they needed to work for a corporation in order to ensure that they wouldn't be abused. Like, they didn't drop their kids off at daycare all day. Why is it that I have to do this? It doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem right to me. But everyone told me, this is how it is. This is better. This is the best way to do things. And so I started kind of looking into, how did this happen? How did we have such a massive shift from when my grandmother was my age to now? Like, how it seems like a big change. And I had no idea when I started researching this stuff, just what I was getting myself into, because feminism might not seem like a big deal to those of us born after 1965, but it is, without a doubt, the single greatest revolution in all of human history. There's no other revolution that comes close. Not even, I would say, even the Industrial Revolution. That's probably number two, a very close second. But this feminism changed everything about the way that we live our lives, the way that we view the world, the way that we interact with each other
and can I
less
say,
than 100 years.
And the ability to be controlled.
Yes.
Because I always try and push this out, is that, you know, every man, if they were to think what the most important person throughout their life is probably going to be their mum, old sister, nan, whatever, you know, there's going to be this woman who was so important to just automatically changed their mind, looked after them, made decisions about everything, and pushed them into doing things and giving them advice to do things and steer them in ways that other men just don't do. Men kind of bully and cajole each other. You look up to your father, you're chasing him, but you're never quite catching up. But your mum and the women around you give you advice, and they change people. They change how you live your life and the decisions that you make, even if it comes down to voting and stuff as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, how many men out there right now were raised by a single mom? A lot. In the United States, probably about 30-40% of men are raised by a single mom. Parents are divorced. And even if dad's in the picture, you're spending most of your time with your mom. You go to school where 85% of elementary school teachers are female. You go to college universities where it's like extremely dominated by Marxist feminism, the whole institution. We're talking about, the STEM programs are run using feminist standpoint theory now, which we can get into later, but people don't know that they are breathing feminist air, that they are swimming in feminist water, because we've been in it our whole lives. And this is from the time you're a tiny infant. And those of us our age or younger, you have not been exposed to anything in the popular culture that is not extremely feminist. Think of every TV show you watched, every movie you've ever seen, every pop star who is out there right now. It's female superheroes. It's strong, independent women doing it on their own. It's boss babes. It's career girls, Sex in the City, Beyonce.
9 to 5, baby.
Yes, exactly. Even Mary Tyler Moore back in the day was kind of one of the first incarnations of this, or Bewitched. The TV show Bewitched is another great example of this, where it's like, and it's all framed as liberation. Like you were just saying, this helps control people. It does. And the great trick is that they frame it as liberation. Oh, the women are liberated now. And we never ask from what. We just kind of assume like, oh, this evil oppressive patriarchy. And when I started researching the earliest feminists, we're talking not just first wave, but we're talking like even before that. If you go back, my book starts in ancient Sumeria and goes through, the Middle Ages, and then kind of starts with the whole Enlightenment revolutionary ethos and the women that came out of that, who were the ones that really popularized it. Mary Wollstonecraft, and then later all the suffragettes in England and America. And when you go back and read their own writings, not some other person's commentary on it, but like you read Elizabeth Cady Stanton or Susan B. Anthony, they're the first ones to tell you that they couldn't get women on board. The women were the ones who weren't interested and didn't want to hear about it. Why? Because they said, look, we can't seem to convince them how oppressed they are. They get most everything they want, right? They enjoy a lot of protection and provision under this evil patriarchy. They don't seem to want to get into revolutionary politics much. They seem to only be interested in raising kids and organizing community events and doing things with their family. And they wrote at length about how horrible it was that we can't get the women on board with this. And when I started reading that, I thought, well, if the women didn't want it, because that's what we're always told, right? You're always told that it was a groundswell, grassroots thing, that women looked around in the 1800s and they went, oh no, we're oppressed. We must march and we must picket and we must bomb post offices until we can vote because we're just so oppressed. And so when I go back and read them, not only saying that women didn't feel oppressed, but these women themselves, like Mary Wollstonecraft, she's participating in the French Revolution. She's gallivanting around Europe in the late 1700s, having children out of wedlock, engaging in threesomes with famous artists. Nobody put her in jail. Nobody beat her, flogged her, put her in the town square. Nothing happened. She, in fact, was able to make money off of this. She had elites who promoted her and told her to write about, women's liberation. So I just thought, man, I'm missing this whole historic oppression piece that I've been told about. Where is it? I can't find it.
I go back a little bit further. When you were saying that, then I was thinking I automatically thought of Lady Godiva. Lady Godiva being the only person who was allowed to keep their lands when William the Conqueror came in and took all the land. There's powerful females throughout history who have gone against the trend. But there's also a lot. Most of my research, I research a lot of family histories, and I go back into the 1800s quite a lot. I'm the early 1900s. And one of the things I realize is that when you're looking at a man, you're looking at all their business stuff and what they're doing. And you're looking at a woman, you're looking at them fundraising for the local schools or charities, university women's events, things like this. And they're all having a great time. They all seem to be enjoying themselves. There seems to be loads of activity. And I'm sure there's a load of people who didn't like it. And there's like this kind of, I think we come from a generation where something that was pushed out quite a lot is like Jane Austen and Bronte sort of novels, where these disgruntled women who are obviously ahead of the trend are like, why society like this? I want something different. I'm going to, and they're the heroes, the heroines, of the story. And that was kind of put upon our generation more and more. I felt that era was pushed as this like, oh, look how liberating. They were trying to be liberated back then. And I do agree. I think a lot of this is based upon fantasy.
Yes.
Next, we take a look at this clip from Garland Nixon and his guest Sarah from Geopolitics.
Uh-oh. I don't know what happened to Sarah. There we go. I was about to say, oh no, she's gone that fast. The CIA's, they're busy people here.
They're on us.
DD Geopolitics. You know, I've been hanging out around long enough to remember Donbass Devushka. Yes, I remember that. Most people are like, DD Geopolitics, what's that? I remember where that came from. I remember reading these articles. Oh my gosh, she's a Russian bot or something like
Russian
that.
bot. Yes.
As were we all. You're really in this country, unless you're an anti-Semite, an anti-vaxxer, a Russian Putin puppet, than need anything else, a crazy conspiracy theorist, and unless somebody calls you all of those or some combination of them, you're really not. You're just probably an agent for the system.
Yeah, you're more look at who hates you rather than who likes you. I want to make sure the right people hate me.
That's right. I should get a T-shirt with all of those names. You know what I mean? Or just a hat for each one. Today I'm a conspiracy theorist, and tomorrow I'm a Putin puppet.
Different hats. That would be great.
Exactly. All right, let's go. Because everybody always asks me about my Biden bombed the Nord Stream hat that I love to wear. That's my favorite one. You could probably make $1 million selling that darn hat if I did.
That is
constantly people are like,
Biden
bombed Nord Stream. Okay, let's get to it. Number one. We'll hit the latest news. This is hilarious. I mean, nothing's hilarious about war.
Well, it is, but it's not. Yes.
Okay. Washington will immediately halt all airstrikes on Yemen, U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday. The U.S. president said the Houthi group has told Washington it did not want to fight anymore. We will honor that. We will stop the bombings. They have capitulated. I find that slightly hard to believe. I'm more like think that no matter what, here are people that literally, if you look into it, basically what they'll say is, our former leader who's died a while back gave a sermon, shall I say, and gave us a prophecy that one day we would be blessed to fight the U.S. empire in Israel. And I'm supposed to believe that they just woke up one day and capitulated to Trump. I kind of think Trump made this up. I kind of think MQ-9 Reapers fell all over the place. F-18s mysteriously slipped off the side of a ship when they just happened to be making, turning around. I think they were going back for popcorn and soda or something like that. And they were making a turn and, hey, it happens every now and then. A $60 million fighter plane slips off. And I think Trump said, they said, what do you want to do, Trump? And he said, the Houthis have capitulated. That's it. The Houthis have capitulated. Let's declare victory and go home. That's my thought. What do you think?
Well, it's pretty amazing since the Houthis, Ansarallah, have claimed since the beginning that they won't capitulate, and the only way they'll stop is if the genocide stops in Gaza. So I'm not sure why they would capitulate now. Maybe he just thought because of the airport bombing that he would be able to sell this. I'm not sure, but I guess the good news, or maybe the bad news, however you look at it, they've Mohammed al-Bukhari already came out and said, he's the Ansarallah spokesperson, said that those words have no basis in reality.
But that's in a way, I mean, you got to laugh about it. That's the great thing about Trump, right? For instance, Joe Biden, those guys will be like, yes, we're working nonstop for a ceasefire. And they'll do that for like 9 months. And then the Israelis will come out and say, they never really asked us once for a ceasefire. Right. So the Biden team will look serious and they'll like have the media on their side. And there'll be some great big operation to, tell their lies. Trump, he just comes out and says, I talked to the Chinese the other day, and the Chinese like, oh, we didn't talk to him. He's like, yeah, I did.
I it's like, do you think, I had to ask you, do you think that he just says things, or do you think that there's some mental degradation going on a la Joe Biden? Like today, for instance, when he's being asked about, sorry if you hear any toys. I just got a puppy and I'm just trying to keep her from being awful, but she's playing with a toy. But today when he was asked about the bombing of Yemen, he did say they capitulated, and then he was asked for more details as a follow-up, and he said, they've said, please don't bomb us. And they said, well, where did you hear that from? And he said, it doesn't matter where I heard it. Yeah. A very good source. Yeah. Trust me, bro.
Yeah. Well, see, but here's the thing about that. And that is when Trump does that, because here's what happens. Because I always, I was a Democrat, right? Mm-hmm. Until the whole Bernie thing. And then I left and now I hate both parties, right?
Yes.
Became an independent. Okay. Here's my point. The arrogance of the Democrats when they point out that Trump lies, and I'm like, yeah, okay, a politician that lies. Who would ever imagine such a thing, right? But I'm like, I can't even begin to point to the lies of Tony Blinken. Pretty much every word that came out of his mouth was a lie. Joe Biden. So these people and Sullivan and these people lied nonstop, but they looked professional when they lied. And they had this look on their face, and they had the whole system behind them. The whole system said it's all true. And you're like, well, that's not true. Yes. Putin woke up one morning absolutely unprovoked, totally and completely unprovoked, because he wanted to broaden out and restart the Soviet Union. They make up stuff that's absurd, but they're much more serious when they lie. And it's a bigger lie. And they have a whole system supporting these lies, but it's still a damn lie. So realistically, oftentimes if you were to gauge the size of a lie, right? A lie that could get us all nuked versus a lie that just says, yeah, the Houthis said they gave up and the Houthis didn't give up. I tell you the truth, since they're both lies, give me the lie that says the Houthis said they gave up over the one that's going to get us all fried in a nuclear Armageddon.
100% agree, and at least it's more entertaining. I feel like at this point he knows it's entertaining. So but yeah, I agree. There's obviously a more like safety-ish thing that you referenced here. It's not as coordinated, it's not as practiced. It's sort of like this off the cuff, just sort of businessman-esque jargon and exaggeration. So yeah, it's obviously not as dangerous as Biden's or as involved and convoluted, but it's still, I mean, it's just, I think it provides endless entertainment. I don't know if people find it funny. I'm sorry, but it's like a have to laugh so I don't cry thing or worry, but I do find him consistently entertaining, consistently.
If you're going to deal with the empire, at least you get a couple sniggles out of Trump every now and then. Either way, you're dealing with imperialism, but you get a couple sniggles out of this guy every now and then. Even if you have to, half the time, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe the horrors that are being done in my name. But at least every now and then I get a chuckle. And here's what I think. I think that, and let me be honest about this. Biden and those people would have never stopped bombing Yemen. Biden and Blinken would have never stopped bombing Yemen. Trump is not a part of the system. So Trump may wake up on a given day and say, what the hell are we doing this for? What's going on? Tell me about it. Well, we're bombing them. Are they going to stop? Nah, they probably going to stop. Oh, crap. What's going on? We're losing MQ-9 Reapers. They're dropping out of the sky like sparrows, right? And, we're losing, this is the second F-18. We're firing missiles at drones that cost like $20. I think they bought them from, they bought these, they're like buying drones on Amazon for $100, and we're spending a $2 million missile to shoot them down. And I think Trump just got like, what the hell are we, what? I'll just make something up. So whereas he doesn't give a crap, whereas the Biden people, to me, they would see this as like their stance as the leader of the free world. It would be challenged, so they can't possibly stop. They must smite the Houthis or whatever the hell they think, right? We must smite the Houthis. We will never let them challenge our authority. Where Trump would just be like, we're losing too much. This is, how transactional he is. How much is it costing us? About $1 billion a week. How much are the Houthis spending? About $100. Get us the hell out of here. You know what I mean? That's the way I see Trump.
I mean, yes and no, but they haven't stopped bombing. They bombed again today, while like the Canadian newly elected prime minister was in the United States. So they bombed again after. I don't know if it's just remnants or it hadn't gone into effect yet, or what the plan even is. But
or if he was even telling the truth
at all.
We know he might just say we're not bombing them anymore and just keep bombing.
Yes,
them.
we really don't. But I guess at least we're not on the brink of nuclear destruction. Like under
not today.
Biden. Not today.
Yeah. And I'll put it like this. Let me ask you this about the Iran thing. There are a lot of people saying we're going to war with Iran. We're going to attack Iran. We're going to attack Iran. Here's my opinion. I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
I don't believe it's going to happen.
No.
I think Trump is a guy who, he's easily distracted. Yeah, he's, one day he's, yes, this is great. Then, one day I think we got a deal. The next day, True Social, they better do what I say or or I'll bomb them the next day. Well, I think we're getting closer. That's what you get with Trump. But I just don't think he wants to pull the trigger on a major war. I don't think he wants, he doesn't want a big screw up. And I think he's like, it could be a big screw up. I don't think he'll pull the trigger on a major war.
No. I 100% agree. Probably while you were at the mechanic, I don't know if you saw or not, but the Iran talks are back on. I think that he really, 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 really wants to go with diplomacy here. He really wants to avoid any sort of direct confrontation with Iran. 100%. It makes the Israelis seethe, but so be it. They're just going to have to seethe. I agree 100%.
I remember reading that Hegseth was at one point against it. Like a lot of people get freaked out over tweets now. The one thing that Trump brought in his first campaign is the tweet politics, right? That he tweets this out and then everybody reads it and they just freak out and they go bananas over whatever the latest tweet is, right? And he'll do a 180 on tweets, constantly, right? But so Hegseth, one of his drunken stupors tweets something like, Iran will be held accountable or whatever the hell, right? But apparently, according to reports, he was kind of against it. And here's what I think. I think the Pentagon, whether they're for or against it, I think they told him the truth. Look, man, we can't stop one stinking Houthi missile. I mean, we got all of this and one missile. They fire one missile, goes through all of our air defenses, plop right down in the middle of Ben Gurion Airport. I think Iran has more than one missile. So I'm just saying, if we go against Iran, they got more than one missile, if you get the picture. And I think Trump and Hegseth are like, if we go against Iran, we can talk a lot of trash, but it ain't going to work out well for us. And it could work out really bad. And Trump, here's the thing. He doesn't want to be the guy that attacked Iran and got his ass kicked.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be that guy.
There's a huge risk of that, of getting in my opinion, the type of assault that would be necessary to subdue the Iranian government is not the type of assault that America is equipped or prepared to get into, and not at this time at all. It would require a ground invasion, and we're not in the shape for that. So that has to be completely off the table.
Yeah, well, it would drag us into another conflict. But this time, it's not the Houthis. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think you've been attacking Iraq, who's, you know, they had 1950s Soviet stuff. They
Right,
really
this
were not
isn't
a
that.
right? Libya, a little teeny country with, you know, a couple million people. Okay, so you've been attacking these small popcorn-sized countries, right? This ain't that. This is a major regional power, and you're going to do an expeditionary conflict where you're going to the halfway across the world to fight a regional power on its own turf. The odds of you winning that are not really good. You know what I mean? They ain't going nowhere. They've been there for thousands of years. I know they're not going anywhere. And they can just sit there and they can just lob missiles at you all day and all night. And they ain't going nowhere for thousands of years. Now you get dragged into this war. You're getting hurt. It's not fun. How do you get out of it without putting up a white flag? I think Trump realizes that enough to say, I can call Ukraine Biden's war, even though now he's kind of taking ownership for it. I can call it that. But if I attack Iran, I can't blame nobody. And that's going to go bad. And I do not believe he will pull the trigger.
Next, we look at this clip from Hrvoje Moric and his guests Graham and Darren from Grimerica.
R is Grimerica. Grimerica is the Canadian duo Darren Grimes and Graham Dunlop, who produced the Grimerica show, Grimerica Outlawed, among numerous other exploits and activities like audiobooks, workshops, and tours. Welcome finally to Geopolitics and Empire, Darren and Graham.
Hey, thanks for having us. Good to see you.
Happy to be here. Thanks for coming on. You know, way back in the day, you guys, I didn't tell anyone you were my very last guests on TNT Radio. And I quit right after that. Nothing to do with you guys. And, you know, those segments on TNT were short, but here on my podcast, we can speak at length. And, you know, I typically ask first-time guests to tell us about themselves. But with you guys, I won't, because Teace Snyder produced an amazing mini documentary about you guys that explains your origin story. I'm going to leave the link in the description so people can watch that. And I was second in line to have a mini doc produced on myself by Teace. He just put out the third on Derek Bros. I'm guessing the fourth will be on Charlie Robinson. And I'm just curious, you know, how is that process of having Teace follow you guys around, film you, and what are your thoughts sort of on the final, you know, product itself, the mini documentary?
Well, I found it a little awkward, to be honest with you. I mean, we were audio only for so long. We really avoided the video thing. I mean, I didn't even want to use my real name at first. Like, I didn't have much of a social media presence, so I've never really felt the need to be photographed or videotaped. But now we're doing videos, you know, for the podcast now. So I feel like I just have to get over my stupid fears and just get, you know, just be comfortable with it or whatever. So. But it was pretty awkward. I mean, it was a little easier for him to get Darren's personal life in there because he was at Darren's house. So, you know, it was a little and he warned us of this. So it's not like anything against Teace. He did a fantastic job and it really came out well, but it was a little lopsided as far as our personal lives go, but that's totally fine.
What do you think, Darren? If we could have got your mom and your sister out to CAC.
Yeah. Yeah, we were at an event. I mean, it was weird having him follow us around the event and doing like, you know, like these shoots, these little quick shoots and stuff. I mean, I don't know. I find it kind of awkward. It was at
the event. It would have been more awkward if it wasn't at the event.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're already at the event and you're sort of on anyway, because you got a bunch of people there that are come to see you. And that event's us too. Well, we have Brandon Powell too, but it's still, I mean, it's a ton of just Grimerican. So it's like, a lot of the Randall events we'll go to and people will just be like, who the fuck are you, buddy? It's like, you know, which is kind of nice because you're this host but you don't have to be on, you're different kind of on, you know? It's just less stressful when people don't know who you are. Not that I'm complaining, but, you know, you got to entertain, I guess, when it's your event. And then, so the camera was just further of that kind of helped. It was probably more awkward at the house, having him around the house and not because of Teace, just because it's filming, you know, and it's like my kids are causing a ruckus and yeah, and then my mom was there and my niece was there, so it was a whole to do, but it turned out great. I mean, we got some great shorts out of it too. It really was something else.
And he does a really good job. I mean, he's a really good job at making you feel comfortable and sort of leading you through the whole thing. And yeah, it was good.
I was a bit reticent. I didn't want to do it initially, but he was twisting my arm, and I had fears of I'm revealing some personal stuff that I haven't previously. They also with the family, a few bits there with my kids and my wife, but it's kind of like, you know what, I'm already out there with the podcast, and some of my fears, maybe some bad actor might want to retaliate, but I'm thinking like, because I'm here in Mexico, and it's like, okay, but the cartels and the Mexican government, the CIA, they have access to all this software. Like, some people don't know the first government to buy Pegasus Israeli spyware was the Mexican government. And then they've got a second one called Titan, which they sell to the cartels and to the Mexican government. They can just type my name into the system, and it'll pull up my mobile phone, all of my accounts, and they can find, like, if they want, I think today they can pretty much find anyone they want to. So I'm like, I don't care anymore. Just
that's very much the way I've been thinking lately too. Yeah.
They got you.
They got us. So I mean, it's just a matter of like, hopefully you don't trigger something that really takes you down. But I mean, I think I don't think we're quite big enough for that kind of attention yet. I mean, we've really been lucky just to kind of just sort of stealth under the radar. We're
not that out there anymore either. I mean, we're not like, there's a lot more
extremism.
Yeah, to use their word, there's a lot more extremism in Canada and about everything. About there was a time when we were some of the only people really talking about vaccines. I mean, remember, dude, like even the no agenda guys wouldn't touch it. They would sort of tiptoe around it, and Rogan would tiptoe around it, and we were just doing like vaccine debates and having Del Bigtree on. So we were getting hammered then. Whereas now I think we're able to blend into, there's just in Canada, there's probably a half a dozen or a dozen channels that are, quote unquote, anti-vax and anti-establishment. And if you start doing, it's a lot easier to blend into the crowd for us now. So I would say that ironically enough, we're experiencing less censorship today than we were, say, 4 to 7 years ago, when we were probably, out in the forefront of it. We were getting hammered even before COVID. We got like just hammered by iTunes, taken off the charts completely. Instead of blowing up when we had 250,000 people view our debate overnight on Facebook and 35,000 people watching it live, you'd think that would be that's like the moment that blows up a lot of YouTube channels and stuff like that. And instead of ours, it just fucking ruined everything. And then, obviously when it came to the COVID stuff, that there was extreme censorship there that everyone had to navigate, but that out of that rose just a way bigger crowd to sort of blend into now. You know what I mean? Our message is sort of echoed by, like I say, at least a dozen channels just in Canada that, not to say they won't just censor us all and wipe us off the face of whatever eventually, but right now, ironically, we're, for the last year at least, and especially, funny enough, like since Donald Trump's executive order, there's like a noticeable thing over the next few days where we notice like YouTube starts gaining numbers again, and we got an appeal accepted
for the first time ever.
We got let back on Twitter a day after Trump's inauguration. So a bunch of stuff. So I mean, that turns out Twitter's just a fucking dumpster fire anyway. But it is still the best place to go for a lot of content.
I was just thinking about that today in regards to this subject, is because there's rumors that Carney, and I mean, he said it too, like it sounds like they want to shut down a lot of this, especially the right wing space, like Twitter. But I thought, and because you were just saying it there too, Hrvoje, they know everything anyway. So why not? But it would be easier if you just kept us on that in a way to monitor us, right? And then I started thinking, you know what? They're not going to do anything. They probably want us on there visible, and they can just see everything we're doing. I mean, people just do everything on X, especially dissenting, right? What's that?
Essential to the social credit system.
Right. Yeah, so that's where I was going to go next, and it's it's interesting what you guys said. The Overton window has advanced, and so we have to like catch up to it. in one sense. But this censorship, it's almost like too good to be true. And I'm seeing what you guys are seeing. Like slowly, my YouTube is like barely growing again. It's weird because my Telegram is just going down inexplicably. Maybe people have people have told me they've lost trust and interest in Telegram. But
it's gotten a bit too spammy too, right? I mean, people just like they're like, I don't even want to be on this. Spam's going everywhere. You're getting put in all these groups without you even acknowledging it. So.
Yeah, and on the social credit censorship. So I'm asking, it's almost like it's too good to be true.
The worst part about X is the fake people, man. It's just like, I don't know who's who anymore. I mean, if you look, there's a slight difference in the color. It looks like if they're like ultra famous or a politician, there's like a grayish check to their check mark. But I mean, it's a fucking shit show, man. I mean, like I'm going through some stuff sometimes and I'm like, oh man, what a thing for this person to say. And then I'm like, not too far into it, and I'm like, oh, this is not fucking this person. They're verified and everything else, which I thought was supposed to be, XYZ, that you've proven you are who you are. You're not fucking Donald Trump or RFK, or there's just a couple on there that are fucking outrageous. It's outrageous.
I'm getting the same thing, and they're sometimes they're strange people with blue ticks. And they'll either leave me insults or they try to get on my good side. And I, just like you just laid it out, I'm reading into it.
Blue tick makes it weird, right? If it wasn't for the blue tick, I'd be like, hey, whatever, man. Twitter's the fucking Wild West. But then when you add that verified check mark to it, it's like, well, that's just sort of, I caught it, but most people are retarded. So there's a measurable percentage of, I would say, of that person's followers that think they're following Ivanka Trump.
Now we look at this clip from the new Misty Winston show.
This fucker, Michael Waltz. And we were talking about, I was on Kyle Anslone's show earlier. By the way, I think I mentioned this. Pasta had me on his radio show. Kyle Anslone had me on his show. Kyle's show is on the YouTubes. Kyle Anslone show. It's ANAZALONE, I think. He's a fantastic guy. He works for antiwar.com and also the Libertarian Institute. He is a libertarian. I'm friends with lots of libertarians. If that's something you don't know about me, there you have it. But he's an amazing human. We've been friends for many, many years now. He's been on my show a shit ton. When I first started with TNT, he was my every Monday 3 p.m. guest. We would talk foreign policy for an hour. We go back and forth on each other's shows all the time. Super supportive of Palestine, super supportive of obviously being anti-war, super supportive of Julian Assange. Good dude. So go, and he just started this new channel. So everybody go, please support his show, support his channel, give him a subscription, like, follow, all that stuff. Okay. So Mike Waltz, this administration is so ridiculous. It is the height of embarrassing. I mean, it's such a clown show that I've kind of run out of words for it. But here, just to open it up so that we know who we're dealing with, this is Mike Waltz, $235,966 received from the pro-Israel lobby known as AIPAC. So that's who we're dealing with, okay? You may recognize him or his name from Signalgate, which is so fucking funny to me that it shouldn't be funny, but it is funny. So Signalgate essentially they had this little signal chat, which the idea that there are government officials discussing like serious foreign policy, national security issues in a fucking signal chat is insane. But not only were they hanging out in a signal chat discussing their war crimes, because there were war crimes being talked about in the signal chat. Literally, they talked about following a guy to his girlfriend's apartment building and then blowing it up. War crime. They're just like talking about it. And I think Marco Rubio was super pumped and cheering on, or maybe it was JD Vance, I think, was cheering it on, super pumped about it. Yeah, war crimes. And then it turns out that this turd, Mike Waltz, somehow he claims, I'm going to play you the video because it's so funny. He claims that journalist Jeffrey Goldberg, who was a shit stain, saying journalist is such a, it's offensive to journalism. He's not a journalist. He's a propagandist. Propagandist Jeffrey Goldberg. Mike Waltz accidentally, he says he accidentally got sucked in to the Signal chat. I'm not joking. Here, let's listen to him.
I could tell you for 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is the bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone, and we're going to figure out how this happened.
So you don't know what staffer is responsible for this right now?
Well, look, a staffer wasn't responsible, and look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did the
execute
number? I mean, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number?
Have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number there?
I never make those mistakes.
Right? You got somebody else's number on someone else's contact. So of course I didn't see this loser in the group. It looked like someone else. Now whether he did it deliberately or it happened in some other technical mean is something we're trying to figure out.
So your staffer did not put his contact information.
No,
but how did it end up in your
that's
phone?
what we're trying to figure out.
Okay, but that's a pretty big problem.
That's what we've got the best technical minds, right?
That's disturbing.
And that's where, I mean, I'm sure everybody out there has had a contact where it was said one person and then a different phone number.
But you've never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone? I mean, I'm not an expert in any of this, but it's just curious. How's the number on your phone?
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets
someone
sucked
sent
in,
you that
it gets
contact.
sucked in.
Was there someone else supposed to be on the chat that wasn't on the chat that you thought was?
So
on
the
the chat?
person that I thought was on there was never on there. It was this
Who
guy.
was that? What person?
Well, I'm not. Look, okay. Laura, I take responsibility. I built the group.
Oh, God. It got sucked in, you guys. Oh, that's not a thing that happens. If you don't have the person in your phone, you can't accidentally add somebody to a Signal chat. They don't just pop up out of nowhere. And also, by the way, I think it was Aaron Matei. It might have been when he was on Jimmy's show. He was talking about Mike Waltz there tried to claim that he doesn't know this guy. He knows this guy. He knows this guy. He's been in the same room with this guy. So he's just a lying liar who's lying. So that's who we're dealing with. That was Signalgate, which was, I don't know, maybe about a month ago. And again, they discussed and celebrated an actual war crime in the Signal chat, which, and I talked about this with Kyle earlier on his show. I think what is fascinating to me about that whole situation, the initial Signalgate thing, is that everybody was freaking out about the Signal chat and the journalists being included, which you should. That's something that we should be talking about. That's fucking crazy. But nobody was talking about the war crimes. Nobody talked about the fact that they blew up a residential building to maybe get some guy. Nobody talked about that. Everybody was just talking about the Signal chat and the journalist, and that was it. And I mean, having a again, saying journalist when referring to this guy is gross. But that's bad. But the idea that high-level government officials are in a Signal chat openly discussing and cheering for their war crimes is a pretty big story, I think. And nobody talked about that aspect of it at all. And we should be clear, it's not just Mike Waltz. Hedgeseth, also super loosey-goosey with the Signal chats. His wife was in one at one point. And we should just mention that Hedgeseth is in way. That guy has no business being in the position that he is in. And Trump is sticking by his guys, which I find to be incredibly fascinating, that he is 100% standing by Hedgeseth and Waltz. In fact, Waltz, I would say, arguably got promoted. He's now going to be the ambassador to the UN. Hegseth, he said, is not going anywhere. And in fact, I wish I would have got that video. Oh, I can't believe I forgot to do that. I'm so sorry. But Trump was, I could probably find it and just like screen share it, but I'm sure you could go find it for yourself. Trump was actually confronted about this on Air Force One. And instead of addressing the problem, he attacked the media, which, if you know me, I don't like the mainstream media at all. Not even a little bit, not even close. There's not 1 ounce of my body that has any respect or appreciation for mainstream press at all. I'm not sure you could find somebody that hates mainstream media more than I do. Openly, loudly, publicly for years. But the idea that Trump was being questioned about this, as he should be, as the president of the United States, when a member of your cabinet is caught doing the things that Mike Waltz was caught doing, and instead of addressing that, and he literally, like he does, this is why nobody likes you. This is why nobody watches you. You're terrible. You're just bad. You're stupid. Like, my guy, your cabinet members are inviting propagandists into signal chats where you're cheering on war crimes. A dude's wife was included in one of these things. And the mainstream media is the problem? No. I mean, mainstream media is a problem, a big one. But in this situation, not so much. Not so much. So, it's so ridiculous. I genuinely cannot believe that he is still, and he's still continuing to back both of them. He, again, made Mike Waltz the ambassador to the UN. Hegseth, he says, is not going anywhere. He has full trust in both of them. They're fine. Everything's fine. It's like the meme. Everything's on fire. Everything's fine. Everything is fine. So I did want to play. I came across this on Max Blumenthal's page. He tweeted this out. He let me see if I have his Twitter up. Yeah, I do. So he tweeted out more confirmation of what AIPAC's director said in audio. So this is what you're going to hear is Elliot Brandt, the CEO of AIPAC. This is audio obtained by Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone. It's of a private session, and he's discussing what AIPAC does, which will surprise none of you, but just want you to hear it for yourself.
There was a discussion earlier about Congress being representatives of the people. Well, the White House has to be responsive to Congress. And so it's working with, at the time, our friends on the Democratic side of the aisle to apply pressure the way that they know how to an administration, as it will be with this administration. Bob was talking about the people who will get appointed into some of these jobs. Look at the top level, you talk about Marco Rubio and Stefanik and Michael Waltz. Those three people have something in common. They all serve in Congress. They all have relationships with key AIPAC leaders from their communities. So the lines of communication are good. Should there be something questionable or curious that we need access on the conversation to? You never know. One of the first candidates I ever met with as an AIPAC professional in my job was meeting candidates for Congress was a guy named John Ratcliffe. He was challenging a long-time incumbent member of Congress in Dallas. This guy looks like he could win the race. And we go talk to him. He had a good understanding of the issues. And a couple of weeks ago, he took the oath as the CIA director for crying out loud. This is the guy that they had a chance to speak to. So there are a lot, I won't call them lifelines, but there are lifelines.
So there you have it. AIPAC doing AIPAC things, right? And they're not shy about it at all. They are not shy about it at all.
Next, we have this clip from the Third Rail podcast with Nature Boy and his guest Weezy.
But I suppose we can recap the official story. So most people, when they hear the Lincoln assassination, probably have heard something along the lines that a famous actor by the name of John Wilkes Booth enters Sports Theater, assassinates Lincoln, jumps onto the stage, breaks his leg, and he escapes for a few days. And now America's most beloved Christ-like figure president is now dead. And that's really what a lot of people think happened, and that's to the extent of what a lot of people's knowledge on the whole case is. But the reality of the situation is the story is a lot more interesting and fascinating. And in my I think the reason we don't get taught it because it's full of holes. It's really a fairy tale. So many parts of it don't add up at all. They're outlandish and ridiculous, and so this is possibly why we're only given that that simple version. But the official story tells us that John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor, coming from a family with a huge acting background. His father was a famous actor. His older brother Edwin was another famous actor, more famous than John Wilkes himself. A lot of times people think that John Wilkes was the most famous. It was actually his brother. Now, John Wilkes Booth was a somewhat of an accomplished actor. He played the lead role in many plays. But we are told that about a year prior to the events that took place on April 14th of 1865, Wilkes Booth started concocting the plan to kidnap Lincoln. And so it is rather interesting that the government acknowledges it as a conspiracy, quote unquote. Now, my take is that the conspiracy went far more deeper than what the official narrative tells us. And so about a year prior to the actual assassination, we are told Wilkes Booth started recruiting co-conspirators, folks such as John Surratt Jr., who was the son of Mary Surratt Mary Surratt.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give some names, but I don't want to give too much names because I'm going to bog you down. I do have a playlist on a lot of the Lincoln stuff that I've done and covered on my Odyssey. It's in a playlist, Lincoln Assassination playlist. But I kind of want to just give you a brief overview because if I start just nailing names, it's going to...
We could spend 2 hours just doing the backstory on this thing,
Oh, man.
What
Yeah.
you're saying. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, so... about a year prior to the actual assassination, the plan was to kidnap him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as it started getting closer to April the 14th, the Civil War officially ended on April the 9th at Appomattox, with Lee surrendering to Grant.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are told that this was pretty much the culmination of Wilkes' rage. Wilkes blamed, we are told, Lincoln for the South suffering and just sending America into turmoil. It was hate that drove him, similar to what the terrorists did on September 11th or what Timothy McVeigh did at Oklahoma City. It's always hate. And so Wilkes Booth's hate is what desired him to concoct this plan. Now, a lot of the co-conspirators started second guessing Wilkes Booth. They said, they were like, dude, we can't kidnap the president of the United States. This is a crazy idea. So
see what you just did to the South? Holy crap. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and that's the thing that a lot of people gloss over, because you'll hear a lot of official historians that stick to the official narrative talk about the co-conspirators. Oh, they deserve to be hung. They deserve death. I'm like, what? If anything, they were guilty of conspiring to kidnap Lincoln, but they were not guilty of trying to kill him. And that's what they don't talk about. It's buffoonery. So let's assume that the plot to kidnap him was afoot. They didn't deserve the gallows for that. But nonetheless, many did go to the gallows for this plot. Now, we are told, and this is the official story, that Wilkes Booth didn't come up with the plan to assassinate Lincoln until that very day on Friday, April the 14th, which was a Good Friday.
Oh, that's just
yes.
like esoteric, isn't it?
Oh yeah, a ritual. I'm starting to believe it was a ritual sacrifice.
The more I listen to Donut, the more I start believing that stuff, man. Go ahead, sorry.
Dude, yeah, I'm not huge into that, man, but you just can't deny it when it's there. Especially in DC, man, with all the Masonic symbology everywhere, man. It's pretty bananas. But yeah, on April 14th is when Wilkes Booth decided to kill Lincoln. All the other co-conspirators decided to back out, except a handful. One of which was Lewis Payne Powell, a young 20-year-old lad who was born in Alabama, raised in Florida, and he was really the only Southern boy of the group. All the other co-conspirators were from the Maryland area. So when people try to cast it as a Southern plot, it fails miserably. Only one of these alleged co-conspirators was from the South. And Wilkes Booth had that young man at the same, so they were going to carry out the assassinations at the same time at 10:15 p.m. Booth wanted Lincoln, the grand prize of killing Lincoln at 10:15 p.m. He sent Lewis Payne Powell, the young 20-year-old, to go assassinate the Secretary of State, Seward. And then he went over to, he asked George Atzerodt, a fat, drunk German immigrant, to assassinate Vice President Johnson. Those three attacks were meant to, according to the official story anyways, to destabilize the nation's capital. You know, God damn, it's kind of like September 11. Planes hitting simultaneously at the same damn time. It's the same script, man, that just goes over and over and over again. So anyways, how they were supposed to hit their targets at 10:15 p.m. in the mid 1800s with no digital watches or anything like that is beyond me, but that's what the official story had it at. So in the end, Lewis Payne Powell doesn't kill his target. George Atzerodt, the little fat German immigrant, gets drunk, cowers and pusses out, for lack of a better term, and doesn't even attempt to assassinate President Johnson. So really, the only one that succeeded was John Wilkes Booth. That, in a nutshell, is the official Lincoln assassination conspiracy. Now, when you really get deep into it and you see all the mysterious deaths, you see all the things that don't make sense, like the Seward attack happening by one guy that allegedly attacked almost 10 people in a 3-story 30-room mansion. And then in his mugshots, he's got no scratches, no bruising. It's complete horseshit, man. And really, where I come on all this, as far as my view on the entire Lincoln assassination, is that Lincoln died. Now, who shot him? I have doubts that Wilkes Booth was the trigger man. Actually, I think it was the other gentleman in the presidential box, Mr. Henry Rathbone. And I can go into who Henry Rathbone is, because maybe most people listening to me right now have no freaking clue who Henry Rathbone is. But that's my trigger man. And
that's an interesting
the
story.
The attack on the Seward mansion, I believe, never took place at all. A completely manufactured event, just like the moon landings, just like the Boston Marathon bombing, and so on.
Go into that. I get a quick question. If it never happened, were there verifiable lacerations to Stewart's neck? Because he was, from what I remember, he was the one that fell off a horse recently, like a couple days before, and had, contraptions on here to do whatever. And it was that contraption which stopped the fatal blow. So the story says. Was there any verifiable wounds on Stewart?
Seward.
Seward.
Yeah. So William Seward had suffered a carriage accident conveniently about a week prior to the Lincoln assassination. Now, what I have found was that Seward had actually visited with Edwin McStanton, who was the Secretary of War. He visited with him to tell Edwin McStanton that there were assassins in Europe that had put a hit on Seward. They had put a hit on Seward. So a week prior to this, he went to visit Ed McStanton, and on his way back from that visit with Ed McStanton, he gets in a carriage accident. And so he was worried about his ass getting assassinated. He, not really about Lincoln. Now, some historians will say, no, Seward loved Lincoln. Seward was a good guy. Go to Wikipedia. Find out some information on Mr. Seward. Seward was one of these power-hungry clowns. See, a lot of people have this warped image that in 2025, we are losing our rights, which is true. Absolutely. But this is nothing new under the sun. A lot of people forget that Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. So now we are hearing Trump trying to suspend habeas corpus in today's news cycle. He's doing it now, currently.
Yeah, not to mention Lincoln jailed journalists, from what I understand. Yeah.
Seward would tell people, he would brag about being able, you see that guy over there? If I want to, I'll put his ass in cuffs and throw his ass in jail without no warrant, without him committing anything, just because if he looked at me wrong. This is Seward. He bragged about these are power-hungry scumbags, man. Yeah. And this is what they don't really tell you. These official narrative historians will try to dramatize like, oh, a lovely time in the mid-1860s, it was a glorious time. People were kind. People were friendly. And they have a warped sense, man. This Ed McStanton, the Secretary of State, in my view, he's kind of like the Dick Cheney of the Civil War. Dick Cheney, man, just a piece of shit. But you'll see the people that stick to the official story say, oh, no, these conspiracy theorists are wrong. McStanton loved Lincoln. He absolutely loved him, but they'll completely gloss over the fact that McStanton often referred to Lincoln as a giant gorilla, because of how lanky and tall he was. He talked so much shit about him prior to Lincoln becoming a president. Once he became president, allegedly they smoothed things over, which I don't buy. This guy, McStanton, the Secretary of War, this Dick Cheney guy, also at one point dug up his dead daughter and just had her corpse chilling in his office.
Dude, that's not.
What kind of a normal guy does this shit?
You don't do. Psychopaths do that. Psychopaths do that. People that got serious mental fucking issues. My God, if they dug up their dead dog, I think people that stuff their dead dogs got some fucking mental issues. But he dug up his dead daughter's rotting body and kept it in his house.
Yeah,
Jesus, dude, that's like Silence of the Lambs type psychosis.
Super weird shit.
Next, we have this clip from the Indie News Network with Indy and Reef.
And they came out with, again, more documentation about the UK. It's funny, this is a very UK-focused, international-focused show tonight. But this time, Freedom of Information documents show that, of course, Israel's behind the crackdown on dissent in the UK. Now, I don't know that anybody's really surprised by this. As he says, this should surprise no one. But now we've actually got it
and
in
we've
writing.
Seen a couple outlets cover it recently too.
Right?
Declassified touched on it. I think Grey Zone touched on it.
They did.
Clarenberg did, I think, specifically.
Yep.
I'm not mistaken.
Lots of award-winning journalists, which is why we're going to talk about it. So as Ricky states,
Israel essentially, they've requested police crackdown specifically on multiple journalists, which I'm sure you're about to tell us.
Yep. So he says, how we've seen a massive wave of suppression in the UK with journalists, activists, social media users, and protesters being treated as terrorists. Correct. Well, you'll be unsurprised to hear this was being coordinated with the Israeli embassy. I wonder if that also was happening in Canada. A series of Freedom of Information requests have shown that Israeli interference in our justice system is extensive. Such interference is completely illegal, of course, not that anything will happen. Released emails discuss the introduction of moves to crack down on dissent, such as the Police, Crime, and Sentencing and Courts Act, and coordination with Facebook and Instagram. They've done that in the United States, too.
They showed the Israeli embassy pressured Attorney General's office, to clamp down on pro-Palestinian protests, just like here. And arms manufacturer Elbit Systems was regularly meeting with high-ranking officials. That's right. And they've been pressured quite a bit by protesters and activists.
Palestinian Action.
Yep.
Correct.
So redactions in the documents were justified by the Attorney General's office as the details would be likely to prejudice the UK's relations with Israel. You think? It shouldn't, because they have free speech laws in England, but apparently not. Basically, we can't know the full extent to which Israel is even interfering in our politics, because this would, of course, upset Israel. That sounds very much like Laura, by the way. The documents.
Oh, no.
The documents demonstrate that Israel holds influence over government ministers, the Attorney General's office, the Crown Prosecution Service, and the police. And by the way, Prime Minister Keir Starmer as well. We've talked about how he sleeps next to the 98th most influential Zionist in the world, according to the World Zionist Congress. The latest revolution is that the AGO passed on contact details of the CPS and counterterrorism police to the Israeli embassy in a heavily redacted email. Needless to say, the CPS is supposed to be operationally independent, and there's no reason for the Israeli embassy to be in contact with it, you would think. So they got this email sent by Nicola Smith, the head of international law at the AGO, to Daniela Grutsky-Eckstein, who is Israel's deputy ambassador to the UK. And what we see again is very little, although it says Nicola Smith to Israelis re CPS SOIS contact details. So right there, you've got something. There again, here it says it's the subject contacts CPS SO15 is what it is. Okay, and then everything else is redacted other than let me know if you have any questions. What do you think they're giving them there and what they're asking for there?
Yeah.
Smith and Eckstein had met 11 days prior to this email. All we know is that they discussed the people who had worked on the Palestine Action case. We're not allowed to know any further details about the conversation. Isn't that nice? That's full transparency, right?
It's nice.
I think so. This is just the latest piece of evidence of Israel interfering in the Palestine Action case. The CPS was having great difficulty prosecuting members of Palestine Action and other activists because when they appeared in court, juries would acquit them. Would acquit them? Well, how about that? Because they were exercising free speech and not breaking the law? Yeah. Therefore,
if the gloves fit.
Well, this isn't the United States, man. Therefore, politicians
in the UK, apparently they do have a right to freedom of expression, but it has restrictions that include terrorisms and hate speech and yada, yada, yada. So, FYI.
Sure.
But, yeah, continue.
So politicians started pressuring judges into not allowing defendants to explain their motivations so they could not elicit sympathy from the jury. What? How can justice possibly be served if you can't explain why you did something? No, they're just allowing themselves to frame the narrative and send you away. It sounds like how they're sending people to CCOT without charges or without any say. The rules were changed during Suella Braverman's reign of terror so that the European Convention on Human Rights would not apply in such cases, especially Julian Assange. The defendants were treated as terrorists even when they weren't charged under the Terrorism Act, even when the alleged crimes wouldn't constitute terrorism according to international legal standards. All of this was done to clamp down on dissent and protect the genocidal state of Israel and quiet not just dissent, but protest against their murdering of babies and children daily with U.S. bombs and British spy flights. One internal file admitted, quote, Palestine Action does not meet the threshold for proscription as they do not commit, participate in, prepare for, promote, encourage, or otherwise be concerned with acts of terrorism, unquote. But that doesn't matter. Despite this, the members of Palestine Action, which are the so-called Filton 18, have been in prison for over 8 months without trial because they tried to stop the UK sending arms to Israel so it can blow up children, as I said a minute ago. How can it be a crime when the UK has suspended some arms licenses on the basis that Israel is already violating international humanitarian law? I love it. It's only some arms licenses.
You violated the law.
Unbelievable. All right. If someone's going to shoot a child and you take that gun and you destroy it, you're not in the wrong. And that's essentially what Palestine Action has done. In August of last year, members of Palestine Action drove a modified prison van into an Elbit Systems factory in Bristol, causing £1 million worth of damage. The team dismantled weapon systems, including the quadcopters that mimic the sound of women and children crying to lure Palestinians into the open to be shot. Yes, I'll read that again because that sounds vaguely important. The team dismantled weapon systems, including the quadcopters that mimic the sound of women and children crying to lure Palestinians into the open to be shot, because they have humanitarian feelings and want to save someone who is crying or help them. And of course, Israel needs to prey upon that humanity and murder the people that go out to try to do that. Isn't that nice? So, of course, let's lock up the people that are trying to destroy the weapons that do that. These weapons were being sent to Israel to commit war crimes, but no one in the UK has been prosecuted for facilitating those war crimes. No surprise. I think our so-called justice system is a bit upside down, don't you? Revolution continues saying, shut Elbit Systems down worldwide. I totally agree over on Substack. None of the Filton 18 were charged with terrorism offenses, yet they've had their rights restricted as though they were, with limits on their legal support, family visits, healthcare, and religious rights while they await trial. Again, this sounds very similar to how they treated Julian Assange. This is because they were arrested under powers granted by the Terrorism Act. How can this be anything other than an abuse of power? The problem is, who holds them accountable? They're already the people in power. It's not just the Israeli embassy that's been interfering in our justice system, of course. Freedom of Information documents show that Home Office ministers and staff have been pressuring police and prosecutors to act against Palestine Action since way before October 7th. Remember, folks, this didn't start October 7th. None of this did. Their goal already was to reassure Elbit Systems. Again, profits over people all the time. Defense contractors over the people that they are sending the weapons to Israel to murder. Absurdly, a briefing note for one meeting read, quote, a director from the Attorney General's office will be attending to represent the CPS. The CPS declined to participate in this meeting to preserve their operational independence, unquote. They don't even want anything to do with this. The note admits that such a meeting would jeopardize operational independence, yet the CPS sent a representative anyway? Clearly, if you're sending a representative to the meeting, you're not preserving your operational independence. Documents confirm ministers, police, and the CPS and Attorney General were meeting with Elbit Systems to discuss Palestine Action, but the details were redacted, as a Jesse Jet song very famously says also. One meeting with Elbit was attended by 3 members of Yvette Cooper's home office. That's, again, it's merger of state and private entity and defense contractor. I mean, there's a word for that, right? Yep. I believe it begins with F.
I do believe so.
Sure. So
that's just close enough.
How can it be justifiable for Elbit Systems to be meeting with such people?
Who are these people?
Not good people, I'll tell you right now. Even if you see the arms manufacturer as a victim of a crime, the only people it needs to be speaking to are police. Elbit just needs to hand over its evidence and submit witness statements. That's it. Anything beyond that is political interference. It's also collusion. It's worse than political interference. Ominously, it's been revealed by Declassified
Corruption,
UK.
even.
Yeah, maybe, sure. But either way, it's a merger of defense and state and private enterprise and the media and now the courts.
Yep.
He who controls the spice controls the universe.
Ominously, it's been revealed by Declassified UK that Elbit Systems has its own intelligence cell that coordinates with British police on a bi-weekly basis. Huh. How about that? An Israeli arms manufacturer is not just building its weapons of genocide here, it's literally spying on our citizens and telling police who to prosecute. Sounds like Beitar that's setting up operations in the United States and handing lists over to the President of the United States of who to prosecute and deport.
Yep.
Such interference surely violates the Crown Prosecution Service's General Principle 2.1. Quote, the independence of the prosecutor is central to the criminal justice system of a democratic society. Prosecutors are independent from persons or agencies that are not part of the prosecution decision-making process. Again, prosecutors are independent from persons or agencies that are not part of the prosecution decision-making process, like Elbit Systems.
Okay.
CPS prosecutors are also independent from the police, not in this case, and other investigators, or should be. Prosecutors must be free to carry out their professional duties without political interference and must not be affected by improper or undue pressure or influence from any source. So who's suing these motherfuckers? That's what I want to know.
Nobody. That's who.
It's worth pointing out that not only do government ministers interfere to prosecute opponents of Israel, they interfere to protect suspected war criminals, such as Tzipi Livni and Gideon Sar. In the latter case, the UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy, he gaslit everyone on World Press Freedom Day, we'll get into that in a minute, held a secret meeting with his Israeli counterpart and personally ensured he would not face arrest. Which is why I believe we showed on the show when Declassified UK confronted the Israeli minister that tried to sneak into that meeting with Lammy. If he can protect suspected war criminals, he can protect those who
Not to be
oppose war
confused with
criminals,
Lemmy.
but no, definitely not. Not Eat the Rich. Not Motorhead. But he can obviously protect those who oppose war criminals, but he chooses not to. In fact, our government does the opposite. The clear evidence of political interference in the Filton 18 cases has led to calls for the charges to be dropped. In a democracy, any court case would be free from political interference, yet we have interference not just from our own government, but from a foreign government too. How can anybody possibly say justice is going to be served? And again, that's Ricky, Council of State Media, Indie Media Award honoree. This is from his publication, The Dystopian Times. Go subscribe to that. Good dude. Also, Sana Saeed posted something yesterday, was May 3rd, World Press Freedom Day. So you know we were gaslit like crazy by every world government that has been suppressing free speech, that has been prosecuting activists and persecuting journalists, and in Israel's case, murdering journalists. On this World Press Freedom Day, as Sana Saeed, independent journalist formerly of AJ Plus, writes, the Palestinian journalist Ahmad Bassam sends a message from a besieged Gaza. There is no press freedom without the freedom of Palestinian journalists. Over 200 Palestinian journalists and media workers have been killed by the Israelis, purposely targeted, while their slaughter ignored by our press industry. Not just them, but in some cases their entire families as well, because they decided to report on what Israel was doing to where they lived. Our only insight into what's been done to the Palestinians in Gaza, what crimes the US, UK, and Israel have committed, as well as others, has been solely through the efforts of these brave men and women. So let's watch this short video here. Oh, that's cut off. Undo.
I was asked by the Palestinian Journalist Syndicate to stand before you today because I speak English. But you don't need to be speaking more than one language to be able to describe what is being perpetrated here. In fact, very often you don't need words at all. A rolling camera is all it takes to capture crimes that humanity should have never seen. Crimes that our throats went hoarse, screaming and calling on you to stop. For over 574 days, we've been here reporting the ongoing killing of children, women, and civilians, and the wiping out of families. We've been reporting to you exclusive stories of massacred families, of Corbett bombings, of children burned in their tents, of babies starved, denied milk. Reporting it to you because partially you can't get in here, but largely because it's our own duty to live stream a genocide against us to you. A genocide that claimed more than 52,000 souls of our children, families, and friends. How have we been rewarded? We've become targets and death counters. We have reported and witnessed the deliberate killing of at least 212 of Palestinian journalists inside the Gaza Strip. 10 of them were burned alive right outside that wall last month. And more will die, denied treatment they desperately need, suffering here. And the toll will rise and rise as you allow this genocide to continue. And today, on the world's day of press freedom, we stand here to remind the world that the press in Gaza is bleeding and is taken hostage by the most depraved occupation in modern history. We stand, have questions to journalists around the world who choose to stand silent before the corpses of their Palestinian journalists, asking them, are we less worthy of freedom than you are? Are we less worthy of life than you are? But we also stand to salute and send our deepest respect to every free journalist and every free person who refused to sell their voices despite temptations and intimidation, and continue to share the truth we broadcast here, to stand by our side as if they were among us. And finally, to the free world, we are exhausted and have every right to take off these useless vests. But we won't, because as we stand today, we once again vow for the blood of every child and every journalist the Israeli occupation has killed here and elsewhere, that we won't. We will not forget them. We've done our part. We'll keep it on. And it's about time you start doing yours. Thank you.
The press is free.
Man. And he's right. You know, them wearing those vests puts a target on their back.
Is a target. Yeah.
Now, let's take a look at some highlights from AM Wake Up from this week. Make sure to support and share their show to keep this great channel going. Share the show. Share the show. Share the show.
Share the fucking show.
So here's Cousins. I don't know if we'll make it all the 2 minutes and 16 seconds.
Hanging with my cousin, reading dirty magazines. We seen two niggas kiss and we ain't know what that should mean. Then we start reenacting everything that we had seen. That's when I gave my cousin head, gave my cousin head, gave my cousin head, I gave my cousin head, I gave my cousin head. I know these niggas start to judge me now. And I know these niggas about to judge me now. Told it off when we was hanging now. I was like, cousin, not to tell nobody. Please won't tell me, take it to my grave. You can set you free someday. I don't think they understand that I'm not attracted to a man. They thought I was gay. Nitrous don't help me, it just put me in a trance. I'm talking about euphoria, I'm not talking about a man. Told her don't leave me, cause I need you by my side. As long as you don't leave me, then I'll probably be alright. In that one time that you left me, I didn't get no sleep that night. In that one time that you left me, I took 10 first to get high. 10 first to get high. Pray that I don't die. But if I die, you in the sky. 2 bites of the quake. Don't leave, just stay, man. Let's go on a vacay. Leave the world behind. Leave the world behind. Leave the world behind. Nitrous don't help me, it just put me in a trance. I'm talking about euphoria, I'm not talking about a man. Told her don't leave me, cause I need you by my side. As long as you don't leave me, then I'll probably be alright. Then I'll probably be alright. Took 10 first to get high. 10 first to get high. Pray that I don't die. But if I die, you in the sky. 2 bites of the quake. Don't leave, just stay, man. Let's go on a vacay. Leave the world behind.
Buy your tickets at.
Well, there's that. So he sucked his cousin's dick. He knows niggas are going to call him gay, but he's not attracted to men. Truth will set you free. He does nitrous. He, yeah, that's Kanye's life.
I feel like we have to run this one. I really do.
Hello, Jim. Oh, boy, it's my best pal, Eric. What are you up to? I'm trying to write jokes, but I'm not as funny as you, so it's tough. Well, maybe I can help you. We can team up. Really? Wow, you would help me even though I'm crippled. You are caring and not fat. Now, let's see. How about a joke that has something to do with fish dicks? You know, because fish dicks sounds like fish dicks, Jimmy.
Eric Cartman, you are handsome and not even remotely fat.
Thanks. So what I'm thinking is, do you like fish sticks in your mouth? What was that?
Eric, you have to save us! An entire army of Jew robots!
Oh my God, what are Jew bots doing here? Flame on! Flame off!
You saved everyone from the Jew bots, Cartman!
Come on, Jimmy, we gotta go back and finish that joke. Like fish sticks in your mouth, what are you, a gay fish? There! Wow, Eric, incredible. Too bad I'm a dick, and I'm gonna take all the credit. Suck it, bitch.
Yo, Kanye, you sure about this?
It's time for me to stop running. I need to believe what people tell me. Let all my fans know I love them. But a gay fish just can't live in the outside world forever. Don't be sad for me, guys. I'm going home!
Come on.
I've been so lonely, girl. I've been so sad and down. Couldn't understand why haters joked around. I wanted to be free with other creatures like me, and now I got my wish. Cause I know that I'm a gay fish, gay fish, yo. Motherfucking gay fish, I'm a fish, yo. Going on a gay fish. It's alright, girl. Making love to other gay fish, All those lonely nights at the grocery store, in the frozen fish aisle, feeling like a whore. Cause I wasn't being true, even though everyone said that I had to make a switch. Gay fish, now I know that I'm a gay fish, yo. Motherfucking gay fish, I'm a fish, yo. Going on a gay fish.
There's really no difference between that song and Cousins. It's really the same song.
No, pretty much, minus the visuals, but yeah. Yeah, pretty much, yes. In the night and the frozen fish store, feeling like a whore. That's fucking hilarious. The frozen fish aisle, feeling like a whore. Jeez. South Park.
Right.
He's not saying anything new, but just saying the quiet part out loud, saying the agenda part out loud.
Let me bring that up, dude, because this guy gets a lot of screen time, and I think we've even played a clip or two of his over the years. But he gets a lot of screen time on a lot of shows. It's like, a level-headed and rational, nonpartisan expert kind of thing.
Right.
Who, completely turned his back on the establishment, Charles.
Yes,
He's a
yes.
brave, truth-telling crusader who would in no way, shape, or form steer anyone wrong. We're, of course, talking about Jeffrey Sachs. Let's play that.
And there's one other concept that I find very, very useful. And it's actually embodied in the European idea. It came from the Catholic Church originally, but it's called subsidiarity. And the idea of subsidiarity is, let's get real. We need governments at all levels. We need a global government, that's the UN. We need a regional government, that's the European Union. We need a national government, that is the government of Cyprus. We need a local government, that is the Nicosia City Hall where we are right now. You have governments at all levels. And there's one other concept that I find very, very useful. And it's actually embodied in the European idea. It came from the Catholic Church originally, but it's called subsidiarity. And the idea of subsidiarity is, let's get real. We need governments at all levels. We need a global government, that's the UN. We need a regional government, that's the European Union. We need a national government, that is the government of Cyprus. We need a local government, that is the Nicosia City Hall where we are right now.
This nigga.
Governments at all levels. And there's one other concept that I find very, very useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like, it's very, very unique concept. It's kind of like having a government at every level to ensure that there's order and structure and procedures get followed, of course, making everything good. Because if you don't have government, if you have anarchy, people are going to burn shit down, of course, But if you have the UN, if you have the Rockefeller UN, the EU, the globalist EU, if you have local governments, it's going to be all good. Your master keeps an eye on you a lot better when it's all localized and, structured.
Right. And there's a clear chain of command in case something escalates. And
yep. That's how it goes. That was a stupid take from that man. That was a very stupid take. Very unnecessary. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's our world. It's like just openly, it's like, why would you push that though? Oh, well, maybe you're a globalist. I bet you that nigga belongs to some orders and nothing new.
Sure.
Nothing new. Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, we need global government and then regional government. So is he suggesting what, like the North American Union govern Canada, Greenland, Mexico, Central America down to the beautiful Panama Canal?
That's right. Pretty much.
And all of the territories that are anywhere near the Gulf of America.
Yeah, that's the move. Just consolidate power, consolidate it on a big level where all these different people of all these stripes and all these different ideas, they're under one mind, one world order.
The UN is going to give Lula all of South America. It'll be Lulistan.
Yeah, she'll be in charge of that. Of course, you know who'll be in charge of,
Free
who the bosses
vaccines
will
for
be.
everyone.
Yes. Wow. Send niggas to El Salvador. It's like if you're a bad boy, just El Salvador for you,
Mm-hmm. You are a bad dog. I don't want your giant head anywhere near. Go lay down. Go. I'm still mad at you. Punk. No, not on the bed. Lay down. Nope. Big head.
No, it's just that story. It just makes me think of the joint I sent you. Also, the Epstein files. It's like the agenda goes on. Like I don't know what people think is going to happen. Like I don't know what people are expecting. Like I was on X reading some responses to Bundy's. Yeah, we'll release the stuff. I don't know when. It is what it is. People just being like, you know what? I trust the government, and I trust that Trump has something in store, and they don't know the times and dates. And it's like, what world do you live in where you think these people are gonna talk to you or release anything, or like where do you live where you think this is a thing? It's like they want a one world government. They want something where you can be controlled. So in what way do people think these controllers are gonna expose anything in any fucking way? I don't understand it, man. I'm like so beyond that. I don't know how people still see that. That's like different frequencies,
It's it's a special kind of stupid. It is. Later, Gateway Pundit. I don't care about you. All right. Donnie's got an update. All right. Sure.
So when can we expect the Epstein documents to be released? The rest of them?
Which documents?
The Epstein files?
I don't know. I'll speak to the Attorney General about that. I really don't know. I know that we've done the RFK. The Kennedy, Martin Luther King is out there very shortly, so we'll find out. But we've really announced we're doing them in full transparency. When we did JFK, people were saying, "Oh, maybe it wasn't all; it was all." And people actually went up to the office and they looked at some things that were, not really easily available, and they were amazed that we gave it all. And I don't know if it solved any problems for people. People still have questions one way or the other, but that I'm not. But 100% of all of these documents are being delivered.
Sure, Don.
Yeah, nothing changed. Nothing changed from when he said that shit. It's all the same thing. That's kind of where we're at. So, yeah, nothing changed.
Clown show. Absolute freaking clown show.
I wonder what people what are people expecting to happen? It's like, I don't know. I'm just kind of, I'm over it, man. Yeah, breaking. White House has said it has no specific timeline for the release of the remaining Epstein files. And this is, as of yesterday, coming directly from, what's-her-face, Bundy. And it's like, okay, so there's that.
From Peggy Bundy.
there's that. So there's that. Good luck to y'all. Niggas got again. The great, the fucking bait and switch, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard for anybody to look at what's going on, even with Bobby talking about, we need placebo trials for new vaccines. Okay, well, what about all of the existing ones? Are they grandfathered?
Yeah, you're just kind of in there, What a shame.
Like, I'm serious. I know I didn't see anything specific one way or the other about that.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, yeah, what if you can pull some shit up on that? That's very interesting. But that's what that nigga does. It's like, yeah. I wonder where he's at with all the CRISPR. Like, where's Where's he with all that shit today?
I
Our
mean,
Health and Human Services, the same HHS that just greenlit some mRNA fuckery for, bird flu. So there is that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the flu vaccine still got them shits in them. It's like, dude, wake up, people. They don't fucking like you. They want you gone. They want you to die.
I mean, yeah. If they can't use if you're truly a quote unquote useless eater, or you are blatantly dissenting, you can fall into the domestic violent extremist category. You can fall into the let's experiment this new particular gene therapy or whatever on this particular segment of the population.
Exactly.
Yeah. Meanwhile, all of the aforementioned people, whether or not you're dissenting, playing the game, or, being a recipient of their resources, are on some level, some way, shape, or form, getting taxed. And a lot of that money went over into the pockets of Ukrainian officials who turned around and spent it on OnlyFans whores.
Тобі подарували годинник Рішар Міль за $200,000.
Да, это было.
Хто це був?
I'll run it back and
Очень,
try and
очень
read
самодостаточный.
the subtitles here.
Тобі подарували
You were
годинник
presented with
Рішар
a
Міль
Richard
за
Mille
$200,000.
watch, which cost 200
да, это
grand.
было.
She says,
це
yep. He
Поклонник.
says, who was it? She says, a
Очень
fan, a
самодостаточный,
very
обеспеченный.
self-sufficient,
Мне
wealthy
мама
one.
пишет.
Not my
Чим він
boyfriend.
займається?
What does he
Политик.
do? He's a
Політик.
politician.
Да.
Український політик.
Ukrainian
М,
politician?
Да.
She goes, yep.
Він депутат?
Was he a deputy?
Да.
Yep.
Отак от, друзі, бачите, що
So, friends, you see the corruption money of
корупційні гроші
Ukrainian
українських політиків, куди
politicians.
вони йдуть? Куди вони
You
їх
ask where they
витрачають?
go and what
Запитайте,
they
на
spend it
годинники
on.
для...
Hose. That's
200.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, bro.
Hose.
200 for a
grand.
wad. For what? It's
Dude,
like
she knows when your hour's up, buddy. Trust me. She don't need a watch.
yeah, nigga. 200K, bro, for a watch for a Richard Mille.
All right. Mm-hmm.
I got a quick, this is from let me get rid of that. Just in relation to the video, this is from last month, but NATO picks Palantir's Maven AI for military planning amid transatlantic tension. So that video we just saw, it's not too far off from, being real life shit, man. That's what the niggas are doing. So Palantir's playing all ends. They're playing the American end. They're hooking up Americans, the DOD, and then they're helping out the Europeans, and then they're helping out everybody. They're everywhere. Kind of like the classic, pay one guy, pay the other guy, let him fight, and then come in and take the spoils type shit,
Mm-hmm.
But amidst disputes over Trump's tariffs, Ukraine, and very future of the U.S.-Europe alliance, NATO's operational headquarters is committed to using American AI software for military planning. Palantir's Maven Smart System. Allied command operations will begin using the new system within the next 30 days. Okay, so it should be live now, right? Within the next 30. Okay, so it should be live. According to a NATO press release this morning, the acquisition was finalized on March 25th. The release said the value of the contract was not disclosed. I'm sure we can look that shit up though, but I don't give a fuck. But you can look it up, folks. But just to let y'all know, they're everywhere. They're watching you. Oh, I know. Hold up. Speaking of Palantir, have you seen the Alex Karp? He gets asked about, Palantir supporting all the bullshit.
Oh, yeah. We played that where he just trips all over himself like a retard. He gets Peter Thiel syndrome.
The Peter, he gets, he gets hit with the Peter Thiel. Yeah, let me play that real quick. Exactly. He gets hit with the shakes, the mumbles. All right, here we go. All right, here's our boy. And by that haircut is disastrous, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I see him,
you don't look like Einstein. You look homeless. Maybe that's so other homeless people don't ask him for money. He just goes out looking disheveled and looking like, he's fucking one bottle of night train away from really fucking pulling off a good night.
Yeah, bro. The nigga looks like a dust head, dude.
Yeah.
All right, folks, here we go.
That a few people get wealthy, and if you said platitudes that were obviously stupid, you could. Oh. Yeah. And well, if you do, you want to hear my answer? Okay. So, I think the primary cause of death of Palestinians. Okay. Do you want to hear the answer, or do you want to yell? Well, you don't want to hear an answer? Obviously. So the primary source of death in Palestine is the fact that Hamas has realized that there are millions and millions of useful idiots that will.
Can we get security up there?
Mostly terrorists. That's true.
Palantir CEO Alex Karp has been an arch supporter of Israel's systems. His company has provided the Israel army with AI technology to help strike targets in occupied Palestine. Days after October 7th, Karp released a statement saying Palantir stands with Israel. Of course.
She believes I'm evil. I believe she's an unwitting product of an evil force, Hamas. That she unwittingly is part of their strategy, that she is a product. And the most important thing, arguably, in the book, or what Palantir, or what you could learn, is do not become a product of an ideology that sounds sensible.
Wow.
Dang.
Says the Israeli supporter who's sending, all his tech over there, who's making billions. So yeah, wow, bro. Give this nigga a haircut with his fucking Palantir gun. Somebody get the Palantir fucking Skynet laser and give this nigga a haircut.
Right.
Give him one final haircut.
Yeah. Get Daniel Day-Lewis after him.
Yeah.
Not necessarily Palantir, but we played a number of different videos from the Milken conference, which took place last week over the weekend. And it's just one of those, it's where Fauci first disclosed the whole we're switching over to an mRNA platform back in 2019. Come hell or high water, it's going to take something massive, like, I don't know, a global pandemic, in order to get that in motion. But hey, we're on the lookout for something like that. That was at a Milken conference. Let's see. On Sunday, Musk attended the closed door Milken Institute Global Conference, where he provided further details on deploying AI to eliminate government inefficiencies, potentially replacing some public sector workers. According to Bloomberg, citing an attendee of the prestigious conference at the Beverly Hilton in Los Angeles. Musk told financier Michael Milken at the closed door event, with tickets start at $25K. features high-level individuals, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, NVIDIA's Jensen Huang, Citigroup's Jane Fraser, Citadel's King Griffin. How AI will replace some of the federal government's workforce. Yeah. That's the crux of it. Musk went to the globalist elite conference and was like, "Hey, we're doing the government by AI now."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure did. Yeah, man.
AI.
It's not a secret. Yeah, they keep saying it. Like, they keep talking about this. It's like, yeah, what do people think is going to happen?
Yep.
Jobless claims Trump last week as Doge actions sparked biggest year-to-date layoffs since 2020.
Yep. 281,452 federal jobs cut. And look, man, I'm not unhappy about that in theory. I'm not.
Right.
But I know that on the back end is something, even more soulless than a bureaucrat, and that's something that has no actual potential for a soul.
Yeah. On the flip side, well, that's the end goal. It's like with everything though. The thing too we got to consider. It's like the rhythm. There's equal rhythm in everything. Like, these niggas are going hard one way, 200,000 plus people fired. The swing of that is some of those fucking federal agents, those individuals, those taxpayers might just start saying, what the fuck is going on? It might be that switch that gets them to think, what just happened? And gets them to realize, yeah, I've been replaced by fucking AI and Elon Musk and Palantir and Anduril and you name it. Something ain't right. And eventually maybe they'll listen to AM Wakeup.
Maybe. One can only hope. Do we want to hear this fucking ketamine goon lie to Jesse Waters?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Let's go down that K-hole.
You can only go around the table, say what do we get done this week?
Let's go around the table and say what we got done this week.
Yeah, we can't. I can't, dude. I can't. This nigga, his accent alone is like,
okay,
let's go on the table. Let's hear what we've done this week.
Okay,
nigga,
class. I drew a picture. I played video game. I played really good at my video game.
Wow. What did everybody do this week?
Wait, this way? Sure. No, we start with you.
Sure.
V-neck.
So actually, a lot of great work at the Treasury this week. One of the crazy things with regards to the Treasury is that when a payment is made, and the computers at the Treasury actually pay about $5 trillion per year, like crazy amounts, there was formerly not a budget code on there. So if a payment was made, you didn't know actually what it was for. It could have been for anything.
Yeah.
There was a $4 billion COVID fund in the Department of Education. And there was no receipts required, so people could just draw down on it. And when people looked into it, this wasn't us, this was before us, they found that money was being used to rent out Caesar's Palace for parties, rent out stadiums, et cetera. And so the one change that Doge made with Department of Education is we had the simple requirement that if you draw down money, you must first upload a receipt.
I don't know.
That was the only change that was made. You must upload your receipt. And upon doing so, nobody drew down any money anymore.
Yes, but we didn't say that we'd check the receipt. You could send a fake receipt. You could send a picture of your dog. Anything. And but as soon as we asked for anything at all, suddenly the requests were like, oh, we don't need it anymore. Huh, that's interesting.
They were renting Caesar's Palace.
Yes, they were like basically partying on the taxpayer money.
Stadiums.
Yes.
Leasing stadiums. For what?
For parties, basically.
For parties.
Yes.
That's a big party.
It's a big party.
You'd think if you were stealing, you'd start small.
They do start small. But then what happens is over the years, so generally the fraud starts out small and they try to hide it. But then year after year, if nobody stops the fraud, it gets more and more brazen. And every year it gets bigger until they're literally renting out stadiums. Like
what's that, $1 million to rent out a stadium?
Fraud in flagrante delicto. Okay, we're talking.
fraud, and for my delecto. Throwing up gang signs. Fuck this nigga, man.
In flagrante delecto means in the middle of fucking.
Ooh.
Good. Good morning. Pull and hold StreamYard. I do that almost every show. I don't know the StreamYard setting. Did it change for you too? Like, yeah. I can't even describe it. I always feel like I have to say it on the show, even though it doesn't make sense when it's happening to people on the podcast. I'm just like, it's like they like switch to where you have to press the button each time was where it was like intuitive before, right? And it just like brought up the screen, and I'm like, God damn it! Every time it's like at the beginning of the show for me. It kills me.
Yeah. Just and I don't know, man. Sometimes I think that people in tech are dissatisfied with their job, perhaps their position, and they're petty, vindictive little gremlins. And so it's reflective in updates.
Yeah.
You know,
I just think it's like, like that, but also just that it's this like, it's not like, at least at some point before, and it wasn't like just Apple, despite there's all plenty of stuff to say about Apple, but at least the advancements that were made were improvements. Like it was like this, and there's still things like that to some degree, but it was like a whole new thing. Now it's like, oh, well, we're just going to move everything around. Here's your different phone, different things everywhere. And I'm like, well, that's not even better. It's just like, it's just different, but that's it. They got to make it seem like there's some new innovation every time. Otherwise no one's going to buy the new phone. It's like the same old thing that I don't know if that's what StreamYard did or not, but for me, it just was something maybe they thought it was better or not. I feel like you get in a routine with things as you get older, and the change just becomes frustrating in some cases. We're becoming those people.
Yeah. There's that, but also when the updates are counterintuitive,
right? Always
to what makes something run smooth. When the updates seem to like hit the fast forward button on the planned obsolescence of the product, or in the case of StreamYard, I kind of feel like they just threw all kinds of stuff at us, regardless of whether or not it's beneficial or helpful, in order to justify the $90 a month price tag that they hit you with, like the low end premium.
Mm-hmm. Well, but they haven't increased any prices or anything, so
not
it's like
in a year, but they did. They went from $50 to $80 like overnight.
All right. Well, I mean, not that I don't like that, obviously, but like you can understand why in a field right now that is exploding. You know what I mean? Like I'd imagine that they're just like even a StreamYard or a what was the other one? Not OBS, but like another. What was the other one? There's another one.
Like Zoom.
I guess Zoom actually does fit for the point. I was thinking of something else, but
Restream.
They just Restream's a version of it too. Yeah, good. But they even those major platforms are probably just growing faster than they can even build. Like this is a worldwide phenomenon, and it's on that note, it's funny how we always talk about that the reason is because this has been a field that's been overtaking a prominent mainstream control structure for a very long time. And up until very recently, you were all just crazy maniacs in your parents' basement. And then it was like snap of the fingers, and all of a sudden they're vying for them. The reality was they were always doing that behind the scenes, calling you a bunch of children, both trying to secretly get involved with it as fast as they could to take over the thing. But StreamYard and the rest are just trying to keep up, but yeah, that's why it'd be great if, since they're mainstream, I don't trust any of them, it'd be great if somebody could create something like this that was run by, an independent media person or something like that, like Charlie and Activist Post decide to make their own, you know what I mean? Like that would be fantastic, because then it would at least alleviate some of that concern of choke points. But I, for one, have never had any issue with, at least as far as I could tell, there's been some things, examples where you wonder, but where I've been like cut off by StreamYard, for example, or Restream or any of them, which is surprising when you think about it.
Yeah. I've had, significant tech problems with StreamYard, but
me too.
I've never got that email that was like, oh, you're using our service for naughty boy behavior. We're going to have to, invite you to become successful elsewhere.
Right. And that's what I mean. It's like, cause you never know. I've been suspicious many times, but it's like, most of these platforms, when they're that high level with, and such an obvious choke point, like Stripe or the rest, which I'm surprised that hasn't been pulled, even though it kind of happened for a second. And I think we won that exchange, to be quite honest. And if you remember all that, but the StreamYard part has never been like on the surface like that, which I just think is surprising. Like, I don't know why that wouldn't have been like the first focus for a power structure trying to suppress people like us. Maybe there's too obvious. I don't know.
Well, I mean, there was a early like COVID era. There was a whole bunch of people that got at least temporarily kicked off of PayPal, Cash App, Venmo. Yeah.
I mean, I've never got left it back on. Stole about $6,000, I think was the amount, and they just boot. Yeah, that was crazy. That was one of the earliest, hardest. I've gone through plenty of them since. Not as much money, to be honest, but like because even that I didn't have everything there, luckily enough. But it's like I've just been very careful ever since. But yeah, that was rough, man. That was one of those moments where you're like, can I even do this? Because we had built around what, even at that time, you're still, calling out the things conspiracy theorists, whatever they'll call you. But, you're still like, even going back even further, you're using AdSense or, these different things, and you're out there calling shit out, and you think that's going to be sustainable, and all of a sudden not this one. Nope, not that one. PayPal for me was one of those, I'd already recognized where it was going. And I'd already seen people get pulled off PayPal, and you're kind of going, well, like I had a great long time ago with Carrie Wedler, because she's been through this with anti-media well before most of us. Right. And it was the same thing she told me, is that like, because we know her, she's objective, she's honest to a fault, like integrity, value, principles, you can see it in her work, nonpartisan, whatever. And so she's watching these other things happen. And in honesty, some of them where you're like, well, yeah, they are kind of shit. Even though I don't agree they'll be censored, I do know that they fucking are fast and loose with facts sometimes, And so it's like the question is, are they just going after people that are low-hanging fruit? Are they really just going after people that are doing things? But I'm not doing that, right? And so eventually then she got wiped away, and she's like, this moment of like, well, am I doing that? Like, it's kind of this reflection moment, and clearly she's not. But so the same thing happened for me at that point, where it's like, I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm just not, I'm, at a level where I'm not, even giving them an opening to come after me, but then all of a sudden, and then to me, that was the final straw. It's like, okay, it's not about whether you're doing it right way or wrong way, or, adhering to their standards. It's if you're discussing things the wrong way, if you're, I think in particular, as I've said, nonpartisan, objective, because that is near impossible for the system to just fucking disregard or to break down. Like you see it today, you say the same things. We're bumping up against people online, and you're like, they're coming at you from very partisan, like Trump versus Kamala kind of thing. And you come in and go, well, they're both fucking dumb. And they go, oh, they don't even know what to say. It's like, well, they either assume, they pretend you're probably just a secret Democrat, or you don't even know you're a Democrat, or, that's the only thing it can do sometimes. And so it kind of breaks the whole thing when you come out with the information that reaches most people with logic. So I think that's what it's all about, man. And hope they think that pulling that much money or shutting you down with your ecosystem will make you give up. And most people it will. It's hard, man.
Yeah. No, it's you have to be either funded or a particular kind of, hard-headed bastard to keep going forward every single day. And so, here's to the hard-headed bastards that are like, okay, I can barely pay my bills this month.
Right.
Okay, that's all right. We don't need to, go out to dinner. We don't need to do this. We don't need to do that. We can go for fucking hikes. Both me and the girl cook better than most restaurants anyway.
Right.
Like it, all right, shit's handled. We can roll for another month. Like, and that's, until it changes, that's enough. Heck yeah. I saw this earlier.
Yep. Here we go.
So we've gone from teachers going, don't use ChatGPT to we now have installed software that's going to let us know if you've used a large language model to write your paper for you, to now you've got an AI teacher.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that's what I thought this was. Yeah. What if rapid succession, right? Well, I'm going to bet you there's still plenty of teachers that feel that way, that the teachers don't make these decisions, right? So it's all about the, whoever's deciding from the administration or the what's the term for in school? It's what is that? What's the guy that the administrator?
Oh, the principal.
Well, there's the administrator, right? Isn't that the guy above the principal? That's the term. Anyway, like they're the ones that ultimately decide. They don't give a shit, I think, about the real side of it. I hope that some of them do. I'm a pessimist when it comes to things like that, but I think that this is such an obvious direction. We all saw this coming. We all knew this is where it was going to go, and then you just got the kind of the dying gasp of the people that were trying to stand up against it for obvious reasons. But like to your point, how in the fuck do you think this is not going to be abused? If you got AI teaching, well, they're going to be using these tools. And so essentially, really, I think all it does is allows a very, very simple and then accepted way for them to just corral the way you think, to where you have to use the teacher that is AI, and they allow you to use the AI tools to basically regurgitate back to them what you're supposed to know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So you're not thinking, like with any school we see these days, like medical schools, you listen to doctors that they're honest enough to tell you. They're not being really, they're being taught how to respond to certain circumstances. You give this pill in this circumstance. They don't even really talk about vitamins anymore. It's like, it's insane. It's all this kind of thing.
Dude. And so we did a story yesterday about how AI is like wrecking relationships because somebody will start to develop a stronger emotional bond with their AI agent than their significant other.
That's crazy.
And they're believing the AI over their significant other. And they're like micro analyzing and, over analyzing every little movement that their spouse makes, and then getting, a response that a trained AI has that, it's trained to like lean into that person's emotions and coddle them. And yes, you're absolutely right. That is, narcissistic behavior and stuff like that.
Man, that's crazy. I didn't even think about it from that perspective.
Neither had I until I read the thing. And then I was like, oh shit.
And then you factor in like the spy device sitting in your house that's constantly mapping everything you do and then telling on you to your spouse or vice versa, that's fucking wild, man.
Yeah. And I mean, like I don't do shit, like track my location. You're going to fucking, find me in the woods with my dog or at the grocery store getting stuff for the fucking house. Like it's, but like in a relationship, not government track my location.
Well, either way though, man. I mean, that's the thing is if you are at a point where you are suspicious to the point to where you need that to tattle, then your relationship is likely almost over.
Oh, you've never dated Mexicans, have you?
I have, but my point though is that it's obvious that if you don't have that level of trust, then you likely never really had a healthy relationship. It's not saying it's over. You could build toward that, but that I think that's the issue there is that it's cultivating that distrust at your core family unit level. You know what I mean? How long we talked about this, and whether that's you and your girlfriend or wife or your family with 7 kids, it's like you're creating this core, like, when's the last time you had dinner with your family? Like this is that's not some archaic thing. It's like there's many studies. I wrote a paper when I was in culinary school about that, about the importance of the family dinner and how rapidly that was being removed and what that was doing to us as a society, and it's like, it's clear. So you can see when I was in culinary school, my mind was in the same place,
Yeah.
But it's like, it's so clear how that's happening and you're dividing yourself. Like, what is that? So basically now you've got here's two ways to look at it. AI is serving as like a mediator in that sense, right? Where they're you could be spying on everybody. You could, be like almost seen as the higher power amongst you all. You go to the AI to decide disputes or what's happening. And so that may just be your own thing or what, but then think about if that is simply the government and not the AI, but rather the thing they put there to pretend to be some AI. And it's really just, and so then you're not just having your phone and your spy device and looking what Google says and what Siri tells you, but you're literally going to the gospel of AI and saying, what are we supposed to think in this situation? What did she do? Is she lying to me? It's like, God damn it. Think about that. Like that is exactly what they're building us toward, is this idea where AI is, more than that. It is the new, like even Elon keeps inching towards this idea that it's not just that it's a new religion, that this is a new, what did he call it? He used a term for it where, not the idea of like the singularity or something like that. That we're getting to the point to where this will become a new, prophet or something like that. And that's not the
Right.
word, but it was something like that. It's like, fuck, that's so crazy.
Single one of my friends thinks they're autistic now, and there's a whole bunch of different joke setups that start with that.
Yeah, it's as much as it's a joke, it's very real. These are social contagions. No matter what you think about the core point, and we've gone over this in depth, not worth getting into in the moment, but there is a verifiable part of the social contagion. Even the WPATH leading hospital around the treatments were saying the same thing at the time as we talked about in 2021, that only just even still now breaking through. So it's like that, whatever we're talking about, that's how this society runs right now. And that's a government social engineering dynamic. So if they can convince you that you need, it's, you know what I think it is really? It's about just getting you to corral into certain groups, and then that group is then mobilized in some way through something. I mean, I don't even think it really matters at the end of the day what group that is. It does to other in-depth, smaller points of it. But as long as they can get you leading into some politically motivated entity, and then they can drive that entity where they want, I think that's all it comes down to. That's why we keep seeing the agenda shifts around, the narrative and the focal point, but the real end game doesn't change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I think it shows me. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely correct. You are. And so this, I think, is a combination of a lot of things. I think it has become popular for people to, like the headline says, self-identify as neurodivergent. Especially over the last 5 or 6 years, I've seen a very weird rise in it. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like people are just blaming all of their character faults on, I guess I'm autistic.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I didn't get the family meal of Asperger's, but I got like a 2-pack,
I think it's a double-edged sword, or rather, there's two parts to it. Because definitely, I do think there's a growing problem here, and it's not because people decide to be that way. I think it's because what they're fucking doing to us is causing these long-term neurological issues. But now it's just kind of becoming there's another way to look at it. Just from the let's have fun discussing it from the conspiratorial mindset. Maybe it's that they ultimately want to hide that by making the social contagion go, wherever I'm dyslexic, or whatever it is, because I saw dyslexic in there, or I'm autistic. And then all of a sudden you kind of lose the picture of how bad that problem really is. There's plenty of ways to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so now so they're saying, reduce stigma about conditions such as autism, dyslexia, or dyspraxia has led more people to seek medical opinion or self-diagnose. So, I mean, if you have the opportunity to self-diagnose, the medical system in the West is so fucked up at this point that you can probably just walk in and go, "Hey doc, I have dyspraxia." And the doctor will go, "Oh, okay, well you need this for it."
Right, pretty much. What's funny is they're all up in arms about the pill mills around opioids, which we should be, but don't care about Xanax or all the rest of them, which are way, way more. I shouldn't say it like that, but I think the problems are more when it comes to the opioid problems, because I've researched that a lot. But the Xanax issue is fucking insane because they don't seem to talk about it, or nobody cares, and it's the people coming off of that. The withdrawal is apparently you could die.
Yeah, benzo withdrawal will kill somebody.
Yeah, it's fucking insane. It's supposed to be crazy. And so you got this massive addiction problem. That's just an extension of the opioid crisis, and nobody cares. It just never stops, So you're right.
I kicked heroin. I would never want to kick benzos.
I've never really gotten into those, even though I've had, I've dabbled quite a lot when I was growing up, but I just didn't like it. But I've heard from people that struggle with that I knew that were just like worst thing I've ever had to do in my life.
I don't know. I know I'm never paying Elon Musk to have him tell me that I'm alive, because Garland Nixon is proof that, even if you are alive, Elon can say you're not. And then you don't technically exist in the digital public square. Oh, that's right. I was good. What's up, Teace?
In what way? What's the question? What's happening?
I don't know. You're just kind of staring blankly at the computer right now.
Waiting for, I don't know, something. I don't know. This week, like it was all right. I went on Grand Theft Auto again. I got to
week, right.
What's that?
You're buried in books this week, right?
I've only read 2, just like because I'm doing like a thorough review of Archaic's works. And so I've read When the Sun Darkens, which goes into the Return of Phoenix and Awaken the Immortal Within. And I have a couple of others of his that I'm going to go through. I've reviewed about 40 or more hours of his content. Really fucking interesting dude. He's basically describing classical esoterica using a contemporary vernacular. And it's largely accurate. I disagree with certain semantic details and everything, but most of his chronology I can't really contest with, and it's pretty daunting. It corroborates a lot of what I found with the Archivist. So that's when you get into the vapor canopy, which is a byproduct of cataclysms. You see kind of like a convergence of volcanic activity and then a buildup in the atmosphere that sort of blots out the sun. And then that ups up the ambient radiation on a planetary capacity and makes everything grow to supersize. So it's really fucking weird. We'll go through different sort of like intervals of shenanigans on this planet, and then everything will reach a point of like clusterfuckery, and we'll sort of get set back to one and then have to sort of pull ourselves up by what remains of our bootstraps, and there might actually be a large subterranean civilization stewarding us through all of it while simultaneously using us as slaves. So it's a lot. It's weird. I don't exactly have it all figured out, but I still try and dig into it and better understand the nuance of everyone's respective position on what the fuck is going on.
Well, I've got a couple of clips. Okay. And then I also have a clip of a podcast that a couple of minutes, 3-4 minutes long. But basically they're fucking completely exposing the op and fraud that Stephen Greer is. And I thought we could watch that afterwards.
Yeah, it's a really unfortunate thing because it's like Greer says a lot of stuff that's true, but then he throws it in with predictions that never manifest and a variety of other different things. Because like I've read Unacknowledged and I've seen the documentary, and it's actually relatively well composed, but it doesn't go into doesn't really do justice to the situation. So that'd be interesting to watch. We can check out whatever you got lined up. It's an ongoing conversation, and it's going to continue to get more sophisticated and weird.
Right. Oh, and to set this up, the Dr. Gregory Rogers, Air Force pilot, fixed wing and helicopter, who eventually became chief of medicine for NASA, highly trustworthy fellow. Last night, he released a statement on CCTV video. He saw a flying saucer in a hangar being worked on by scientists. In 1992, the video was shown to him by a U.S. Air Force major. So this is where the current state of former NASA employees, blah, 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 is. And I have 2 clips of this.
However, what I saw on the screen was extremely unique to my experience. What I saw was a white, completely smooth vehicle that appeared to be a flying saucer. It was constructed in the shape of a modified circular egg, being equal in length and shape from all sides, as I would learn as I watched the video. Its contour was totally smooth with no light, flight control surface, pitot tubes, propulsion systems, antennae, or other projections that might be seen on any typical aircraft or spacecraft. While it was generally spherical, it was about 20 feet in length, I would guess. It had a type of beam or equatorial region, with about 60% of the craft being above this region and 40% of the craft being below this region. A shallow dome could be seen at its apex. It was completely white with no seams, rivets, or other clues to its construction. The only exceptions were a pair of vertical
Okay, is this motherfucker literally just describing the shit that he saw on a screen? Like that's some sort of whistleblowing worthy of our attention? This is what this guy's up to?
I mean, in this clip, yeah.
Can you go to Ashton Forbes and pull up the MH like military footage?
Yeah, we've shown a bunch of it for sure.
I'm just saying it's like
not even necessarily his, but we showed a lot of that shit. Chris was like kind of obsessed with it for a couple of days
because it's like verifiably fucking real, and like that's the thing. That's what happened. So that's going on. Why the fuck are we talking about a smooth egg? It's like, I mean, I get it. It's important to establish all these different convergent threads. So it's not me giving you shit. It's like NASA whistleblowers looking at shit on a screen, wonder if they're being prepped for a psyop. You know, it's like without, it's just one of those things. So let's get them talking about the MH shit.
Okay, here's the orbs, if that's what you meant. The 3 orbs around them.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pull that up. And we'll full screen it. All around it, 3 little orbs.
Disappears into a fucking, there it is. There's even better angles of it than that. More close up. Yeah. Like,
it's weird. It's definitely weird.
It's interesting. I saw one dude doing a speculative breakdown of the pyramid scans that were done because apparently the king's chamber didn't show up in the scans, and it's like that's one of the things that like they verified via the various different like measurements of it structurally. So, and even the dude responsible for those scans has a kind of like iffy reputation in Italy. So it's like we'll see how all this stuff comes out, but it's like anytime that it comes to light, it's either being thrown out to get attention on it, to waste people's energy, or it's a misdirection. And it's like it's always stacked up like that. So it becomes a very arduous and drawn out conversation. And ufology has almost always been like that. So it's like it's really exhaustive. I mean, if you're just getting into conspiracy now and you're like, oh, we're finally getting the blah blah, yeah, no, you're not. It's like it's much more drawn out disclosure and technology and the reality of these various different convergent systems. So be ready to get lied to a lot. And that's kind of just how this shit goes. And it gets tiring because of it. It's just how it goes.
Images. Yes, he wears glasses.
Yeah, that's the guy in the government. He's on the task force. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's 100% psyop bullshit that Spielberg's a part of trying to sell to the public, which means that they're moving into like the production phase of it and the psychological preparatory measures for the species at large. Great. We're going to get some really stupid fucking psyops in the next few years. Fun.
Yes, that's correct. The yesterday's show was titled "We Need Better Psyops." We're on the thumbnail at any rate. Let's see. This is how serious we need to take this guy. Teace, hang on. Air Force Chief of Medicine, whatever, Major Rogers. If only he would have been named Major Nelson.
Had I not been watching closely, I would not have recognized the motion. The picture you see is my poor attempt to show what it looked like. It then smoothly rotated one complete cycle going clockwise. Then
what's up? He's almost got the Mr. Rogers cadence. I just now noticed that. Well, hey there, neighbor. How are you today? I sure am glad you're here with us this afternoon.
He entered a child's drawing into evidence.
That might be his.
I understand that, but he entered a child's drawing into evidence. I just want to clarify.
Well, I don't know if this is an official hearing or if it's a presentation.
Whatever it is.
Yes, that is clearly a child's drawing. And yes, clearly he is using it for evidentiary purposes. So, come here, babe. Look at this. I'm off camera.
Holy God.
That's Buddy's UFO presentation. And he's like an Air Force major. Yeah. Yeah.
Rotation in the counterclockwise position.
At
the end of this, it was once more in the same position it had been in when it initially rose from the floor. It then moved to the right and left, then forward and backward, which I assumed was simply testing the controls for its motion. All of these actions seemed routine, noting that it was a flying saucer. However, what it did next surprised me greatly. The vehicle rose from the front of the craft, tilting to a 45-degree forward angle of attack, but absolutely maintained its stationary position over the floor from where it had risen.
They shot him at a downward angle. Yeah. I would like to enter into evidence this drawing that my grandson Xander made. UFOs are real. They're from the future.
If I ever leave this world alive, well, thank you for the things you did in my life. If I ever leave this world alive, I'll come back down and sit beside your feet tonight. Wherever I am,